best of my ability. Should I really look at your name, or should it be the way I normally sign?
You're regular. How you sign? I can cipher and enter name below.
Okay.
Pat, you want to call it?
Perfect.
Okay.
It's my responsibility to call the meeting to order. As the city law.
Yeah, so Commissioner Coyne requested to be by telephone. And there's nothing wrong with that. And it's up to you guys, as the board, to vote on whether it should be permitted to do that.
Could you tell me the extent of his participation? Is he a voting member?
Yes, he's a voting member of the board, he's been elected, so he can participate in whatever takes place.
Okay. And we have an executive session. Is he participating in the executive session also?
So that would be for you to discuss also. I mean, I don't know why you would distinguish between the two, but if you think there's a reason to, you could do that. The only, just want to make sure that if it's electronic, there's no possibility of it being recorded except here on the recorder, which is somewhere that we have.
So if someone decided to miss multiple meetings, would we be obligated to do this every month?
You're not obligated to do anything. If you decide that you can do it this month, that doesn't mean that you have to do it next month.
So in other words, this is not a carte blanche rule that
No, you're voting for tonight.
we're allowing his participation, and in the future, we could say, any board member, not any board member, that no, we do not, obviously, we're not encouraging people to miss meetings.
Right.
So,
But obviously,
in
from time to
practice,
time, people are going to have to miss meetings.
Sure.
And this is a way that you can deal with that. And you don't have to extend it beyond tonight. It could come up next month with another commissioner or the same commissioner, you could decide differently. If there seems to be a pattern, the board could decide they don't want to allow the pattern to continue.
so if he's in a room with 3 or 4 people in the executive session, how do we know that he's not? Because an executive session is a personnel, typically, and a personnel matter. And so it seems to me that there would be a potential issue there. Is that,
I can't answer that question. I mean, I understand your concern. You can ask him if he's in the room with anybody else, and he'll tell you an answer. I'm not going to be in the room with him, so I don't know.
okay. So it would be reasonable to,
But by that same token, if he was in the room today, or any of you are in the room, we don't know if anybody's secretly recording it and giving that information out later. It would be a violation of his duties as a commissioner to allow that to happen.
well, we would be aware in an executive session of somebody other than ourselves.
Yes, you would,
Yeah.
but we wouldn't be aware if a particular commissioner secretly recorded something or divulged information they shouldn't divulge after the executive session.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions?
Yeah, I do. To our knowledge, has this been done before, ever, on the Ridgeville Park District Board?
It's not been done while I've been here. Other park districts have done it. Other local government units have done it. Brian, I assume that it wasn't done prior to my participation.
This would be the first.
Yeah.
I have a couple other questions, or one question and one concern. I'll start with the concern. I just find it to be improper to have somebody participate digitally in an executive session. The nature of it is that it's not open to the public, and it's because of certain topics that are covered during those executive sessions. So I'm not honestly concerned that Dan is trying to record. I'm not implying that in any way. I just don't think it's proper. I don't think it's following the way that that is supposed to take place. I also don't view it to be a necessity that somebody participate. It's a 5-person board. If one person's not here, we can still hold a meeting. So, and that leads me to the other question I had. I found out at some point that there is actually either a rule or a guideline regarding this practice such that it's either supposed to be not allowed or at least discouraged to be used unless absolutely necessary. Like, it's not that you're going to go on vacation like you say and every time just phone it in. Is that true, that there are actually some guidelines or rules around the use of this? Or is it truly just up to us what we want to do?
No, I believe it's up to you.
Okay.
I mean, I'm not aware of any guidelines on it. I believe it's up to you. And, my sense, I don't want to go further than that. I think it's up to you on what you want to do.
Okay, well, the last thing I would say is just that I am wary of this being overused or abused in the future. I don't see any overt reason to not allow it tonight, but I'm concerned that it would be overly used. I think we've seen even in our current state of technology that there are issues with digital transmission of good quality sound and things like that, and I just think it serves us all best to be present at the meetings whenever possible, as much as possible. So I would just like to see moving forward that we don't use this unless we have to.
Anybody else have any comments? I would echo that same comment that this should not be a regular occurrence. It's somewhat extraordinary tonight because we're electing a new president and vice president. So from that perspective, I think it's important to let all 5 members be involved. But again, in the future, I would say that this is not a practice that we should consider. And I would go further that I don't think he should be involved in the executive session. I'm just leery of that because we do an executive session for a reason, and it's not a good idea, in my opinion. Does anybody have any comments on that?
So is it possible to put forth that he can do it, but not include executive session?
So I think it would be appropriate if someone's inclined to make a motion to allow him to participate in the public hearing electronically. And then if that's seconded and passes, then he can do that. But that motion does not have to include the executive session.
Okay.
So I would move
I'm sorry, it'd probably be polite to let him know that
Yeah.
it doesn't include the executive session. But other than that,
Sure. I'm just doing the
Go ahead.
math. Then could Mr. Coyne vote on whether he would participate in the executive session if we vote on
That's a
the
good question.
participation in the meeting?
well, we would need another motion.
I-
And anybody can make that motion, and if he's participating, he can make that motion. And if it was seconded, then there would be a vote on it.
So I move to allow Mr. Coyne to participate in the meeting electronically,
Okay, I'll second it.
The public meeting.
the public meeting.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
So then do we make another motion about executive? Oh, no, because it was just made for the public meeting.
That's right.
Okay, I
So,
got it.
So the part I don't know about is the actual mechanics now that. he
We're gonna
can-
put him on speaker.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm having live stream problems. Do we have his phone number? Did we bring that down?
I have this.
You have his phone?
So we can either put him on speakerphone from your phone, or we can use Brian's. I think.
I'm happy to do it.
Okay. That's probably best.
You have his number.
I do. Okay, yeah, Ms. Quinn, I'm putting you on speakerphone. The board voted unanimously to allow you to participate in the public portion of the meeting electronically.
Okay, my next responsibility is to oversee the vote for new Park District officers. We elect a president and a vice president. This is a new board, so occurs every year with the board, so I would suggest we do the president first. I don't know if there's any rule to do that or not, but I suggest we do the president first.
I'd like to nominate Martha Gaines for president. She's been on the board before, and I think she'd be a really good president.
I'll second the motion.
Okay.
Any comments? The motion was to nominate
Martha Gaines.
for president.
Is the nomination officially a motion, or do we need, okay.
Do you hear that?
Second.
Martha Gaines was nominated and seconded as president. Nomination for president of the board.
So is there supposed to be discussion, or is it just supposed to be a vote at this point?
It's a vote, but I would always allow discussion if there's any discussion for it.
Okay, well, I would accept the nomination, and I appreciate you having the confidence in me for me to do the job. Do you want to say anything about it?
No.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
I
Aye.
Did Dan vote?
No, we didn't hear you, Dan.
Can you identify the other person taking notes?
Jessica.
Jessica's taking notes.
She works in the office, Jessica.
Parr.
Oh, and Julie not taking notes tonight?
Correct.
Okay, is this a long-term change or tonight?
I guess she wasn't able to attend the meeting.
Oh, her. She had a death in the family.
She had a death in
Oh,
the family.
Grandfather passed away.
Her grandfather passed away.
Okay, yeah, I certainly affirm.
Okay, the motion is passed, 5-0 to elect Martha Gaines as the president of the Ridgeville Park District.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
thank you.
I'd like to make a motion to nominate Debbie Braun as vice president of the Park District.
I'd like to second.
I accept. Thank you.
Any comments? All in favor?
Aye.
I
Aye.
Okay, Debbie Braun is now elected vice.
Dan's vote 1 no.
Okay, the vote was 4-1 to elect Debbie as the vice president. Okay. My role as board is over with, so congratulations, you're the president.
Okay.
Do we want to play musical chairs real quick so I can help her? You want to come here?
Sure. Is there a chair there?
He's going to move to Debbie's, I believe. Debbie's going to move next to you.
Oh, okay.
You can leave it there. Dan's on speaker, so
Oh.
probably closest to Martha.
It sounded like he could hear Charles, so I think it's probably okay sound-wise. I'm sure he'll let us know if he can't hear. Okay, so moving right along. It's now time for citizen comment.
Okay. I'd like to congratulate the newly elected board members. My name is William Easton. After the last board meeting, I was approached by the executive director and program director, and I met with them the week, the Monday following. At that meeting, I explained to them some of my experience in helping with diversify programming. I had done so at the McGall YMCA, had increased children of color participation by over 140%, and also with Mud Art Theater, the culmination of that diversity project in which we had the Play ID, which was used as part of the diversity training for the city of Evanston and by Mayor Hagan. So with that, and I also have worked with other programs, Hack Studio, Acuity, Consulting, and a couple other businesses as well. And part of the reason that I've been effective is because of my ties to this community, born and raised here in Evanston. Have extensive ties in the black community as well as crossed over into the white community, have a bunch of ties on that side. Now, I came and I talked with Brian and Natalie on that Monday, and Brian asked me to come back with a proposal. I told him what I was willing to do for free to help out, and he said, no, I want what was done with Mudlark. So Mudlark, the way that was funded was via a grant. So we got a grant from the Evanston Community Foundation for approximately $15,000 to fund that project. So when I came back on that Friday, I met with Brian and Natalie. I submitted the proposal. I was asked to do an assessment of good faith. The payment might be 100%. Brian didn't guarantee me any payment. He said he asked me to do the assessment in good faith, and that he would discuss this with the board, and perhaps the proposal would be accepted going into next year's budget. So what I did is, let me explain to you exactly what it is that I do. I do intensive outreach. I keep hearing people talk about an equity assessment. Now, an assessment will tell you exactly what you already know. You don't have enough kids of color in your programming, and people of color in the community don't trust you. So you can go pay 10 grand for somebody to come and tell you something you already know. So I went out and identified 35 families of color. I talked to 20 in this district. I talked to 22 of them. I also talked to 5 business owners that are in Ridgeville Park District boundaries, including a black-owned recording studio that books local and national jazz, R&B, and some hip-hop talent in regards to helping to cultivate when we talked about outreach and what type of things that can be done to reach the black community. I also outreach to some of the Mexican restaurant on Howard Street. Spoke with the young lady there about perhaps, we were talking when I spoke with Mike Miro about vendors and things of that nature that can help you guys out during the event that you have. Now the interview process that I use is, I'm also a playwright. I'm the executive director of Direct Revolution Theater Company. So in order for me to get a story, I interview folk. And during the process of the interview, you can create the narrative, not create, but you can collect the narrative, you can collect the truth. So what I was able to do was piece together the history of the Park District, because there seemed to be glitch in the whole thing that's been going on. Back when I was coming up, there were similar problems to what you're having now. Then for some reason, it just disappeared during the late 90s into the early 2000s. When Mike was here, participation of children of color was around 40%. And people that were in the programs, and parents of those people, you know, they kind of said the same thing. So we're trying to find out what exactly happened. So what was going on was you guys had a gentleman here by the name of Wes Calamise. Wes Calamise was an icon in the black community. He was an Evanston police officer. He was a member of the Fellowship of African American Men Basketball Association. He actually was my coach back in 6th and 7th grade when we won the championship. Go Bucks. And he was a member, one of the members of the Chessman organization here in Evanston as well. Now, in the black community, like I said, he's an icon. Also, he had ties to the police department. So a lot of your problems that you were having kind of disappeared because of his connections. It wasn't because of policy, it was because of personality and the strength of his personality. So Wes passed away in 2003 or 4, if I'm not mistaken. And after that, you had a buffer system, had a little bit of a buffer where you still had that good relationships with the black community. And what happened was the people that came in to supervise the parks, they were by no means of Wes Calamise. They didn't have the status, the stature. They couldn't be an ambassador into the black community. And in some cases, they were the ones calling the police on these kids that were out here in the parks. And when those people and parents came to complain, they ran into resistance. So you had a falling off. So by 2010, you were pretty much at where you are now. We're operating at 90% plus white programming in a neighborhood that is at least 40% black or people of color. So that the statistics, I mean, statistically, it just doesn't come together. The businesses that I talked to were willing to allow me to facilitate meetings with the program director to work out what they could do to help with the diversity here, and also provide vending for events. The family interviews, as I was just saying, tell that story. Plus, I made phone calls over the last 2.5 weeks. So I had 50 contacts to people that live in your district that don't know that they live in your district. They do now. They do now. And that's part of the problem. People that live over on the western fringe, closer to the canal. People closer to the Greenleaf side. So the fact that people were unaware that they were even in the Ridgeville Park District and eligible to vote, that's something that, you know, kind of came up. I had some very interesting conversations about that because they were under the impression that this was a private park district. Now, I spoke with, leading up to this meeting, I spoke with 3 out of 5 commissioners. I spoke with Dan, Matt, and Martha regarding the proposal. I told them about the things I found out. A couple of the things that came up during these conversations was they were saying that the programming, I had to explain, we're not just talking about rolling out a basketball for black kids and making tacos for brown kids. These parents were talking about STEM, maybe a STEM class, volunteer tutoring, maybe a couple days a week. They were more concerned with programming around here regarding the achievement gap and things of that nature. Not as much the rec activities. So that's just something to keep in mind going forward. Then I still have problems, and language is important. Language is very important. So when I was talking to you, Matt, and we were talking about programming for black and brown children, and you said we can't be all things to all people, I really had a problem with that. Because you don't have a problem with being all things for white people right now here. And the biggest problem that you guys had was by not tracking demographics after West left, it snuck up on you. You didn't have a clue. It was gradual. Then it fell off a cliff. So the first thing that I would recommend is to make sure that you start collecting that demographic information, because it will help you plan your programming accordingly. And then you won't have to be so reactionary. You can respond and be more flexible instead of having to wait until it's at a crisis mode and the community is pissed at you. So that's all I got for tonight, but I'll be seeing y'all around.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we're still in citizen comment. Does anybody want to go next? She raised her hand first. You'll be next. You'll be next.
My name is Stacey Herman. I wear a lot of hats around here. I live within the district. I voted. My kids take dance here. My kids come here for summer camp. I teach programming. I have attempted to do programming to help address this gap issue. I am the arts camp director. There's been a lot of question about my race. I am Brazilian. My employers are not allowed to ask me that. That's why that information is not out there. So there's two things that I want to address with the board today. The first thing that I would like to offer up, I have a master's in early childhood development, specialization in administration. I can give you a plethora of reasons, both from what's best for the children and what's best for your programming, in not replacing your summer counselors every year. Especially in that room out there where kids are coming and they're saying goodbye to their parents sometimes for the first time. If you have someone new in there each summer, you have no way of guaranteeing what those kids' experience is going to be. And that program feeds into everything else, and how those kids experience that program, they're going to take with them through the other programs. I offer free consultation services if anyone wants to talk to me about what that program does for kids, both from a parent point of view. Both my girls went through Lewis's program last year, but also from the child development point of view and from programs. Switching up people working with kids is it's not best practice. You will not find anything that will support having new people come in working with children that have a history like this. And I'd also like to point out that having I'm the newest one on board, but having your camp counselors come back, or the directors come back every year, that's why the counselors that I get to have this summer get to joke with each other about how weird it is that so-and-so's in such and such camp, because they've been here since they were kids. There's not a lot of the counselors that are new to Ridgeville. There's not a lot of the counselors that didn't experience this program themselves, and that brings a really unique piece to the programming. Once you start switching up people every year, you lose all of that. You lose that sense of community, you lose that sense of family, and again, you can't guarantee what kids are going to get when they come in summer. So anything I can do to help on that note, please feel free to ask. I'm always in Natalie's office making lots of suggestions. And then I'd also like to build off this discussion on equity and diversity. I have the skills to offer some of this programming that will help close this gap. Natalie and I tried running programming out of Oakton, directly out of Oakton, so parents wouldn't have to pick up. I tried offering the executive functioning class, which I think is a huge piece of closing that gap. But the first session, a few kids signed up when that program ran, but nobody has signed up despite the advertisement for scholarship. Parents don't have to pick up. There's still the rest of the after-school program there. So I personally would like help in figuring out how we get people in here to be able to take advantage of the programming that is attempted being offered. I would also really like to see this conversation about diversity go beyond color. I think that's an issue that needs to be addressed in our country in general, and specifically in Evanston. But I think we also sometimes we forget that idea of diversity isn't just around skin color, and skin color doesn't necessarily tell you anybody tell you about who a person is. You know, the idea of, you know, certain ethnic groups needing certain things is not how it works for all individuals, and we all bring to the table what we need. And I think that's a conversation that needs to be had with the people who are participating in Ridgeville, not just according to their skin color, not just according to their income level, but who they are as individuals and what they're really looking to get out of this program. And again, if there's anything that I can do in those lines. I did trying to plant some seeds. Northwestern is doing like a pop-up program to try to build up math skills. And their grant is to service the south and west side of Chicago. And I wrote them a letter today and asked them if there's a way that we could bring that programming into Ridgeville and to the parts of Ridgeville, because we need it in Evanston too. And in terms of funding, not a lot of people are looking to fund things like this in Evanston, and I think that that needs to change. And I think that we can really, as a Ridgeville community and as a city of Evanston, I think that we can really show what it looks like when people work together to move forward. I think that there's a lot of power in that. Thank you.
Would you like to go next?
Absolutely.
Alrighty.
My name is Carlos Duan. I'm proud of grew up in Evanston.
What's his name?
I'm a follower of maybe what Mr. Easton said. You know, it's amazing to me that the exclusiveness that it has to come, and I agree with you. It shouldn't have to be about the race. It should be about the community of Evanston. Okay. I have a history in coaching. But question, Rosinski, are you related to the great hitter that came up through the ranks? That was you. Well, before you, there was me.
My brother.
He said before you, there was me.
Great hitter.
My brother was good, but not as good.
Great hitter. And so I have a background in coaching. I was an activities director for Maryville Academy, displaying. So it bothers me that this has to be even brought up as far as, and you haven't been in sports, you know, it builds a lot of character. It builds togetherness. So for this community to have to be questioned about the inclusivity of everyone in the Evanston community, that baffles me. Because it shouldn't even be about that. You know, the gentleman spoke very true to the point that the black and brown community does not trust Evanston. And that's a shame. I grew up here. I've been in Evanston since 1965, probably before a lot of people were born, you know, and so it's just, you know, in this day and age where people need to come together, you know, to have this out here, people feeling that they're not included, you know, in all the things that Evanston, we won't even talk about Robert Crown situation. The black community's just up in arms about Robert Crown because there's talk that they don't want to put a gym because of the black portion of the community that might want to play basketball. That's asinine. That's just asinine for a city like Evanston to be going through stuff like this. It's shameful. It's shameful, you know. I mean, like I said, my dream is to bring up a Little League World Series team. And just to not include the whole of Evanston community, it's shameful. It's shameful. So, you know, Ridgeville, I didn't participate much here because we were always into all sports, and so we didn't come to Ridgeville much. But my cousin's kids did. And it's like they're so far away from it now. They're in high school. And that's just not what Evanston You know, like I said, I grew up here, we had kids from Skokie, you know, and it was just inclusive. It was more together. You know, people say about Martin Luther King that we've taken 20 steps back. And it's factual, just talking about this. Just factual, for people not to feel included in every program that Evanston offers. It's simple. It's my first time here. I hope it's not my last, but I'm just listening and taking it all in, and it needs to get to work for the whole community. It needs to get to work. Thank you for your time.
Can you make sure it's announced, everybody signs their name?
Yes. Okay, I just want to remind everybody that please sign the guest book so that we just have a record of the fact that you were here. And Carlos, what is your last name?
Duany.
Duany?
D-U-A-N-Y.
Okay. Aiden, you want to go next? All right.
Okay, so I'm not good at this public speaking, so I'm going to try because it's important to me. I'm from Steve Nolan. I'm 1628 Seward Street. Born and raised in Evanston. I've been a Ridgeville resident my entire life, 40 years almost. And I am a white woman in front of you, yes, married to a black man, raising 3 brown children. 2 very, very strong-willed young ladies, and a very, very quiet, anxious, timid young man. And I am here because I have been able to send all 3 of my children to Ridgeville camps and programming. And my husband and I have loved it. My son, at 6 months old, I knew there was something different about him. I told my mom, I said, he's agoraphobic, he doesn't want to leave the house. And I could tell that early on that he had something different about him. He cried every single day at preschool drop-off. For months and months and months, he cried every single day at camp drop-off. And to be able to hand him off to Miss Lois, he was who he had already known because his older sister had come to camp here. It was terrifying for me, but I did it because I have to rip the Band-Aid. And I would hand him off and I would walk back to my car and I would cry, but I would sit there and I'd look back and he'd be playing. Because Lois had a magic touch and she was amazing with him. And after 6 weeks of the 8 weeks, he stopped crying and he was playing and interacting with the kids. The next summer, it happened again. Then he went on and he had Miss B. And he still does the crying. He's just a gentle little soul. Then Lois got my youngest, who it takes about 7 people to handle. I'm sorry, Pete. You're going to bring this here. And she's a challenge. And Lois took it in stride. And Lois knew where she was at all times. She, as a teacher myself, I teach at Park School. She's a runner, and she is a hazard. And Lois handled it, and she knew what she was doing, and she never made me feel uneasy. She never made me feel like my child was unsafe. On those days that Arlie was having a mood or having a mommy me, Lois was there. She was taking her, and she did what my child needed. The Ridgeville programming, I love how you talked about how diversity doesn't necessarily always mean race. I have had students, I don't know if you guys are all familiar with Park School, but Park School is a self-contained special ed school for people with severe and profound disabilities starting from age 3 up to 22. We have had students from Park School come to Ridgeville program and be welcomed, and the families are, and I've recommended them to come here. They still send their kids back. They come for spring break camps, they come in places that they can't send them to Evanston. Because you're right, this is not, unfortunately, a Ridgeville problem, it's an Evanston problem. It's a nationwide problem. And the kids here welcome these kids with severe special needs, nonverbal, difficulty walking, putting things in their mouths, and these kids look out for them, and they befriend them, and they make them feel welcome, and they make these parents feel welcome and comfortable. And it's making our able-bodied, typically functioning kids better humans because we accept everybody here, no matter what color they are, no matter what abilities they are. And that's what I love about Ridgeville. I love that the staff is the same. I love that my kids can see Brian riding his bike down the street, and there's Brian, he's my counselor. And they know that next summer, Brian is going to be their counselor, and he's going to be there because that's what Ridgeville is. It's a family, and everybody comes back. And we need that. We need that to continue. So, I don't know about, nepotism, as far as I know in Evanston, is rampant because it's Evanston, and people who know Evanston, everybody in Evanston is somebody's brothers, uncles, cousins, sisters. It's Evanston. So to have a nepotism policy put in place that will damage and hurt the programming because it's somebody doesn't like the idea of somebody's wife being on the staff, it's wrong and it's unfair, and the parents need the consistency, the kids need the consistency. And so please make sure you think about that when you're thinking about who is going to staff that program and the other programs as well. So thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Ida. Yes.
With respect, I'd like to respond.
Can you say your name first, please?
Karen Corright.
Okay.
I've lived in Evanston for 4 years and have not been involved in a lot of things. I wasn't involved in PTA, wasn't involved in city government until relatively recently. And my kids came to Ridgeville one summer, did not have a good experience, and didn't come back. And my experience says this: everyone in Evanston doesn't know somebody else in Evanston. Not everybody has a hook. So to suggest that having an anti-nepotism policy in municipal government is not at all unusual. It's not bizarre. I wasn't here for that conversation. I can't imagine that anyone is casting aspersion on any individual person. But nepotism is not generally considered to be a positive thing in government. And this is a governing body, taxpayer funded. I didn't say it wasn't. I'm just speaking about the nepotism.
But you're kind of leaning towards that. Well, nepotism, this and this and that.
I hate to cut you guys off, but citizen comment just needs to be individuals speaking, and we're not even supposed to comment back. You know, I would love for you to have the discussion. I'd love to listen to it. Maybe another place, another time. Okay. Sorry. Okay, so it's still within citizen comment. Beth, you raised your hand. Do you want to go next, or?
Yes. Does anybody else have any? Oh, what did you?
My name is Beth Stair. I'm a 9th Ward resident in the Ridgeville Park District. I love Ridgeville Parks, right? I know lots of people do. We've heard lots of very great stories and people's experiences. And I thank you for being a vital part of the community and serving the community. And I'm here tonight because I care. So I have 6 things to discuss tonight. First, thank you for meeting with me to discuss my concerns about the camp personnel training. I'm disappointed that you lawyered up and refused to share with me how you dealt with the counselor and the supervisor after knowing that they were involved in taking a theater game that is often played appropriately with proper training and program planning and adjustment for participant age, and tweaked it from its standard form in an extremely inappropriate way that included horrible personal personal violent imagery about the graphic murder of each elementary school spring break camper. The children were required to play, no less. The game was played again after bringing my concerns to the supervisor. My concerns are really not about the game itself, but the lack of training and oversight that exposes a deeper, insidious problem in the organization. The teenagers appeared to be left on basically their own programming decisions without proper guidance or programming agendas or training, and just wonder what else could really happen under these conditions when that training isn't really in place. However, I also am hearing lots of great stories, so it might be that that was really just an anomaly. However, I'm told that the game isn't played frequently. Who knows if it was played in this really tweaked manner? Okay, I hope. So thank you for confirming. Last meeting, I wanted to get confirmation that those 2 people would not be rehired, and I hear that they are. It's not so much about wanting people fired, okay? It is about making sure that you understand what the problem is and that you're really addressing that, okay? And I'm happy that you met with me and you told me about some additional training. I'm happy to hear that you're providing additional training for summer camp personnel in response to this incident. On paper, you've outlined an hour of training during orientation day. I don't really feel an hour of training could really address my concerns. I thought there was going to be something a little bit more substantial. However, I think that you said during our meeting that you'll be doing a more ongoing training and work to implement best practices that will impact staff culture and aid in proper staff training over time. That will help inoculate Ridgeville from similar incidents in the future. So I look forward to seeing how this works out into your best practices, and I thank you for your efforts. 2, please make board meeting packets available online that's similar to other public organizations, including Evanston City Council. 3, last month I suggested that
you guys can set it next meeting.
Last month I suggested that you take advantage of the resources and training from the IAPD, Illinois Association of Park Districts, in developing your best practices. I need to clarify that I'm not referring to being a dues-paying member and attending the annual conference, although both of those things I'm happy to see that you're already doing, great. But I would like to request Ridgeville into the IAPD Distinguished Accreditation Program. Distinguished accreditation would signal that you are working towards establishing standards in line with best practices. I spoke with Bob Joe over at IAPD. 50 out of the 30 members are actually have a distinguished accreditation. It's a self-evaluation process that includes a mentor, assistance, and resources. It's developed by your Illinois peers, professionals, and it's consistently being updated to current day standards that have embedded in probably lots of issues that come around across different park districts. Probably you've had may not be unique to you. The application fee is $600. The deadline is the 1st of April. It's a long process and it takes a lot of work, so it's suggested that you take 2 years in working on your application, and so that would be April 1st, 2021. This is work that you already need to do, and this way you actually have vetted and resources in terms of establishing your personnel policies and your best practices. So I really encourage you to do that. B, I would like the Board of Commissioners to attend one of those IAPD three-hour boot camp sessions in 2019, or in even years, it's called Leadership Institute. C, request that the Ridgeville Executive Director earn certification from the Illinois Park and Recreation Association. There's a certain certification called CRPE, Certified Park and Recreation Executive. IRPA works hand in hand with the IAPD I mentioned earlier. IAPD's focus is on the district and elected officials, whereas IRPA focuses on the development of park district professionals. So I think that these are really good resources, and I encourage you to really use that in terms of helping you to respond to the concerns of the community. I think this would be a really great resource for you. So number 4, Ridgeville vehicles. I would like to request that all Ridgeville-owned or leased vehicles have a signage indicating that they are Ridgeville property. Vehicles should be used exclusively for Ridgeville business. As a taxpayer and resident, I want to ensure Ridgeville is working under a model of stewardship and fiscal responsibility. 5, seasonal restroom facilities. At the April board meeting, William Easton brought up Penny Park as a nice example of an Evanston park that recently provided seasonal restroom facilities. I'll add that they also have a really great drinking fountain. My family uses Penny Park more frequently because of the porta potty facilities. It's a popular and inexpensive addition that has high impact for park visitors and gets people into the parks in great numbers. Last fall and this spring, my kids played the 4 to 6-year-old AYSF soccer at Cayman Parks on Sunday afternoons. For 1 hour, there are over 100 soccer players, over 20 coaches, and since this is not a drop-off situation because they're so young, there is at least 1 adult for every player and often extended families. I often see grandparents there too. During soccer, the parents, players, coaches, and kids frequently complain, mainly to each other, about the lack of restroom facilities. The Sunday before last, my 5-year-old son ran off the field during a water break saying he had to pee. There were no bathrooms available, so I helped him find a spot behind a bush. I didn't like doing it, and I don't like the precedent it sets for my kids, let alone the poor sanitary issues. I can only imagine that the neighbors hate it too. Also, older individuals and teens that face a similar urinary emergency, they risk citations that can impact their lives in very negative ways. I was tired of complaining to each other, so I prepared a petition and brought it to the soccer game last Sunday to see if anyone else would support the opening of the field house bathrooms that are on that property and or adding a porta potty. There was overwhelming support. And my kid's picture. So I present to you today 126 signatures supporting a porta potty at Cayman Park that I gathered in just a sample of 1 hour last Sunday. I didn't sit around the park all day long or anything. This is just for 1 hour, that's 126 signatures. I sent an email to Ridgeville's Executive Director, Brian Wazinski, on Sunday night, asking about plans for seasonal restroom facilities during park hours and Ridgeville's parks overall, and Cayman Park specifically. I had informed him that I gathered some signatures of support, and he has yet to even acknowledge receipt of my email. Tonight, I hope to hear Ridgeville's plans for seasonal restroom facilities during park hours and a rollout schedule. Maybe you were waiting to announce it to everybody. 6, Ridgeville taking control of its reputation. Another reason why I decided to measure citizen interest in seasonal restroom facilities is that there appears to be small but powerful opposition to providing porta potties in Ridgeville parks. I am disappointed by the language that was used in response to and in denial of community claims of inequity, institutional racism at Ridgeville. Alderman Rainey at the March Ridgeville board meeting called for a property tax increase and said, quote, any black person who wants a porta potty in their backyard, they're stupid. Nobody wants a porta potty in their backyard, unquote. You can look at the Ridgeville video on their YouTube page, and it's at 1440. At the April Ridgeville meeting, Commissioner Braun, in defending Alderman Rainey, suggested that we should focus on Rainey's revised description of her intent, not her actual words, and in doing so, she makes a prejudice statement herself. She said, quote, and Rainey said, no one who wants a porta potty in their backyard is stupid. I don't care if they're black, green, blue, yellow, unquote. Please, stop. Prejudice language is divisive and corrosive and obfuscates the fact that the community is bringing to your attention actual scenarios where you could have positive impact. Let's not focus on saying random crazy things. Thank goodness for our right to free speech. No organization has control of what individuals say. However, an organization should denounce speech made by any of its members that violates its core values and code of conduct. Please do not allow racism to perpetuate or condone prejudice language by remaining silent. I know that you don't want to be known as a place where this happens. None of you do. Internally, your best practices should outline consequences and a process. Externally, a public statement that prejudiced comments do not support Ridgeville's values would help build community trust. I hope such a statement is planned for tonight's meeting. And importantly, when a concern is brought to your attention, please refrain from the impulse to deny that it exists, and rather listen, learn, discuss, and implement practices or solutions when appropriate. I see both denial and open discussion happening right now. I see Ridgeville currently engaging in community, especially with Natalie, with open discussion, including having meetings with me and meetings with other people in the community. It's exciting to hear about citizen-supported proposals that we even heard tonight. And I'm happy that you are learning to gather demographics data. I agree, it shouldn't be all about, say, the color of someone's skin. That's just one small metric, but it's one metric that you need to track and have a database for, so that you have tracking moving forward, okay? It's one of the basic demographics for any civil rights legislation. I hope that you are preparing an action plan also for the demographic database, for hiring employees, for your actual employees, and for your programming participants. I know that I shared some things with you since I actually study, do data. I'm a data scientist, and I study discrimination, and I use the demographics data in my analysis. I'm not saying you have to do exactly what I say, but I gave you some resources that you can touch on to maybe come up with your own best practices. Please don't let your steps in growth, self-assessment, and improvement be overshadowed by some of these instances. I feel that Ridgeville is at a critical point, and the community is paying more attention now than ever before. Citizen attendance today exemplifies this to a big extent. Ridgeville, you have the control of the narrative now. Through your actions and response to the community, you have control of what your reputation is and what it will be in the future. Let's not impair what is working already in Ridgeville. Let's celebrate it. Let's shed light on areas of growth potential and healing, and build on the strength that you have from community engagement. We are here because we care.
Yeah.
Sarah Utley, I'm 34 Elmwood. I came last meeting because I was concerned about some of the information I had read in the roundtable and heard through social media about what Beth actually just talked about the spring break camps. That was my impetus for getting here, because I have a young daughter who, as I said last month, and I'm going to repeat myself, participates in your Ridgeville Park District programs. When I was here last month, I started to become aware of Mr. Easton and some of the other comments that there's obviously a problem here. 90% of the participants are white. We have a problem with attracting students and young people of color and supporting them. I was here, went back and read and watched the YouTube video from the March meeting with what Ann Randy said. And as I sit here tonight, I'm thinking about, okay, I think there's a couple of things going on here. My personal interest was, what got me here in the first place was the game that we're talking about, that mafia game at spring break camp. My child's concern. And then I'm hearing from other members of the community about that, about the lack of students of color and young people of color. But then I'm hearing other people supporting and keeping employees when we know that this really isn't working. We know we had a problem with spring break, and we know we have a problem with attracting and keeping and supporting our students and young people of color, and yet we want to pass a legislation or a resolution that doesn't allow us to make sure that we're hiring the best people possible, as opposed to maybe keeping some of the people that may have been part of the problem in the past. I have no idea who the counselor was at the spring break camp. I have no idea who the supervisor is. I have no idea who Lois is. I have no idea who Charlie is. But what I'm hearing is that maybe it's time for a change. And maybe it's time to start to hire people who reflect our community that we're not reaching out, hire people who haven't been involved during a situation with young 5-year-olds who were told not to play a game and still did it the next day again. I mean, maybe through rather than just say, Lois and Charlie, again, not sure who they are, have been awesome in the past, and they're going to be awesome in the future, maybe awesome for some people. I think now about our other maybe federal government or other branches of government, how we want to make, me personally, some changes in the future. I don't want to keep that status quo just because they've been there in the past, and I'm not sure that we want to pass this or have this idea that just because someone's worked here for a long time, we want to keep them. Especially when I'm seeing and hearing from members of the community that there have been problems. So I think we should think really carefully about nepotism and hiring people that will further the goal of Ridgeville than just maybe necessarily people who've been here for a long time and some kids seem to like them.
Okay. I just want to say something and then it's your turn. Obviously, this is great that you all come. Please keep doing it. But as you can see, it's 8:30. We called this meeting to order at 7:30. We have a lot on our agenda to get to in our meeting. We haven't even really started the meeting. So I'm just going to make a note that say whatever you need to say. Try to condense it, distill it, try to get your points across as quickly and concisely as you can, just in the interest of every single person in this room not being here until midnight or later. And now it's your turn.
Good evening. My name is Albert Gibbs, lifelong Evanston resident. I can recall when I came to your community and to your park as a child. Children love to play. It makes no difference where you go. If a child hasn't been taught indifference from one to another, they don't act indifferent to someone that doesn't look like them. They embrace it. They embrace it. No, I won't take long. But I'm going to say I've had my eye on this park, this neighborhood, this community, because I was treated as something that was not human, because I wasn't the right color. You do that to a child, you hurt them. For instance, if I did it to one of your children, you probably want to tear my head off and stick it where I sit. I was fortunate to be raised by people that taught me you don't hate back. But you get to know who those haters are. And you're always able to tell where a person's heart is because of how they genuinely interact with you. You can always identify pretenders. Well, I can always identify pretenders because in your face they smile. Behind your back, and unfortunately, 40, 50 years ago, I still see some of that attitude and disposition that exists. Those are summer months and different programs here. I'm a person that stops and watches children, people. I'm a musician, I'm an entertainer. So I like to see how people conduct themselves, how they move and groove. I'm very sensitive to people that may treat me in a way that makes me feel I need to defend myself. Because you're letting me know I'm not accepted in your neighborhood or in your area. And to listen tonight, I thought I would just shut my little mouth. I'm good at that too. Maybe you can't tell me that yet. But as I listen here, and I've listened to a lady speak in ways that I said, wow, how refreshing. It's always refreshing when you can recognize individuals that step outside of their protective code and they embrace things that are different from them. I listened to some things she said. I'll get this and I'll get gone. I was sent a video, and I watched this thing 4 or 5 times. And so I decided to go to the city council meeting, because I did hear a woman say, this kind of person needs a porta potty here or there, they're stupid. Well, old stupid here stood up and said, I'm a black man. Ain't nothing stupid about me. I may be poor. I may not have gotten my degree yet. Stupid. So I guess that takes someone's intelligence to label other people, to give the appearance you're bigger or better than someone else, stupid, and then you state statements like, put your big boy pants on. Now, what white person has the right to say that to any black person, or anyone, regardless of us building this country and dying unnecessarily for the right to be considered a human being? Seems like that problem still exists here. Seems like it may be still existing. I don't know any of you from Adam's house cat. He took 2 of my minutes right there. I don't know any of you from Adam's house cat, but I think I'm sensible enough to give you the opportunity to be and say and conduct yourselves like who you say you are. I don't have to agree. I don't have to disagree. But I'm also honest enough. My folks taught me, well, why tell a lie when the truth is all right? I'm always honest enough to get in to help something that means right for all, and not just because it's black or brown or green. I know how to lift the ship and work in ways you would say, wow, is he human? No, I care for other people. I care for people. I care for art. I care for mine. My life at times were attempted, or I should say was threatened, by the Ku Klux Klan. Because I was a black child representing veterans of foreign war at a national drill team rifle competition. I saw signs that safely back in Evanston that were saying, from Louisiana, South Carolina, and all the other outwardly racist areas that said, blacks, get out, blacks go home. But in 67, 68, when I saw those signs meaning for me, because the veterans placed us in an all-white neighborhood, I was shot at. 16, 17-year-old kids shot at. Ran for my life. Sometimes I felt like Ridgeville was that kind of place. When I went back home and said, Mommy, wow, what do y'all know about Ridgeville? Why do they act like that? Why do they do like that? I'm not trying to hurt your feelings. I'm just saying maybe someone not recognizing the truth here. But at that threat on my life, I swore I would never have that feeling of my heart in my throat again. So I'm not afraid of ghosts. And if people don't agree with someone not liking them, attempting to do the right thing for all concerned, I'll tell you the people who are behind continuing this stupidity, this madness, of not being receptive to other people coming in through where you live, because this should be for everyone. That's how you build safety. That's how you build security in the community. I don't say you have to invite me to dinner. I certainly don't have to say I'll take your garbage out. For us to have an understanding that if we have the same concerns, humanity, if you're human, you have the same concerns to a great extent. But if you choose to count me out or leave me out, I tend to think, well, that's you. And you've demonstrated exactly why we have this problem here now, in Evanston and around the country. Because you practice maintenance and racial superiority. It needs to stop. Needs to stop. You need to stop it. And all that madness, that person saying anyone who wants a porta potty are crazy and stuff. Well, the issue became public comment was meant for the public to speak. After public comment, then the audience could say what they want. That person turned on their microphone. Their microphone was off. They turned it on so they could get at me. I wasn't there at the following meeting, but then that person offered as well that they won't be attacked like that anymore. Well, then you should not attack people, because you sure enough turned on an off microphone to get at me. And I have as much right to defend me about as anyone here does. So I don't feel I'm defending me. I think you're in an open session that says maybe you got a genuine concern about changing the course of how this Ridgeville Park District and things operate. I take it to mean you have a genuine concern. If not, I promise you, sure as I'm black and can't turn white, I'll know it when I see it. I'll know it on any of it when you continue to want to demonstrate it. I'm saying it's an opportunity to really move in a positive, constructive way. Everyone in the room, everyone in the house. If you don't take advantage of it, you will have demonstrated that injustice anywhere is going to be an injustice everywhere, and you will be continuing to fan that flame because you think you're greater than somebody else, you think you're better than somebody else. Get over yourself. Get over yourself. Don't allow someone else to tell you, well, you talk to him, you're going to start acting like, doing like. But I don't think you're sitting here because you're ignorant. I think you all think you're quite intelligent. This demonstration that's going on and on of black people, black babies, black children being turned away and offended and insulted because someone calls the police on them. I suggest you don't allow it to dictate to you what you need to do. Do the right thing, not the white thing. Embrace humanity. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else that wants to speak for citizen comment?
I just want to, Michael Miro, I just wanted to, on behalf of the Ridgeville Foundation, I just want to thank you for your support of the foundation. We had our annual fundraiser last week, Tavern Tales, raised a few $1,000s, which is going to help sponsor a lot of free events this summer in Ridgeville Parks. We have a Shakespeare Festival, we have a concert festival. I really hope that people are going to come out for these things. I feel like there's a lot of great energy in the room, and I hope that they're going to come out to the parks and take advantage of this stuff. And I also just want to say publicly that, you know, we're really looking to grow the foundation's board of directors. It's a small grassroots kind of volunteer-led organization. But if you're interested in making an impact in South Evanston by enriching Ridgeville parks, come talk.
Thanks. Okay, last call for citizen comment. Anybody? Okay. So we're going to move to the approval of the minutes from the last meeting.
Motion to approve minutes for April 11th meeting.
I'll second it.
One point of question or clarification on it. I noticed that Catherine Moulton is listed as one of the citizens. Just to be clear, that's not our auditor, Catherine Moulton. That's someone else.
It's not a what?
That's not our auditor, Catherine Moulton.
Oh,
Right, that's a different Catherine Moulton?
Isn't she with a K?
No,
She's not?
no,
So it is the exact same name?
yeah.
Okay. I don't know. I don't recall that our auditor was there because I know what she looks like and I don't think it was
And she
her.
doesn't live anywhere near here, so it would be a long trip for her to show up.
Does anybody else remember?
I mean, we have a resident in
from-
the district, but I just wanted to.
We can check the book.
We can check the book, okay. Often people do write their address when they sign in, so if we, do you feel we need to check that in order to approve the minutes, or it was just a?
No, I think it's just worth noting that, that's not our auditor, it's someone else, and it can be checked later, I think that matters.
Okay.
One comment, just real quick. Dan Coyne has indicated that your phone isn't working anymore. Whatever the phone system was, he just sent a message that it's not working.
Thank you. I'm just gonna call back to the speaker.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to approve the minutes. And so unless anyone else has anything to say about the minutes, we'll vote to approve them. Okay, aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay,
All right, there was just a motion to approve the minutes and a vote.
what did he say? Oh, he's voting to approve his voting. Okay, okay, so we're moving on to approval of the bills.
I'm going to go over the unusual. Okay, as you go over, look at the bills, emergency road service was a tow for a flat tire. Martha Gaines, a $20 refund for a class that was canceled. Hacienda Landscaping is the fee for the installation of the lighter park play circuit equipment. As we go down, sorry. Then you have iParks, our insurance bill, $23,052 for our annual renewal. Lurvie's Landscape, we bought lilac bushes, planted them over here. We also purchased 2 trees. You'll see them in the next bills. One's already been planted here, and one's going to Brummel, and more lilacs coming to Brummel Park also. Vargas Auto Glass was a broken window on the F-350. Those are the unusuals.
ATP Enterprise?
What's that?
ATP Enterprise?
Oh, I'm sorry. Way up by the top.
That's a big one.
That's the roof here at 908 Seward. Torn off and replaced in the last month. That's very unusual.
Make a motion to approve the May bills.
I'll second it.
Okay, and just a point of clarification, Mr. President, once you motion and second, do I need to then step to a vote, or? Okay, all in favor, okay. So all in favor of approving the bills from May?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Is Dan voting? Did he
Dan, are you
vote?
there?
It looked like the call is still going, it's making noise, so I just,
Yeah.
okay. Okay, so that was bills, and now we're gonna talk about petty cash.
Okay, Drip Works, a whole $11.95 parts for the watering system at 908 Seward. Evanston Organics, wood chips for the lighter park play circuit. Joel Frankel Entertainment for the egg hunt, spring egg hunt. Illinois State Police for background checks. Just Tire was a tire and a rim for the F-150. MailChimp was for $30 for over emails over 2,000. Home Depot nameplates, 2 new ones. You see them here. Peterson Plumbing, had to rod the sewer here. Target, plastic eggs, and gift cards for the egg hunt. Spring egg hunt. Oh, by the way, petty cash is way over. It's supposed to be at $2,500. I called Ann Cavode during the month and got permission to go over because basically the wood chips threw us way over.
Does that wood chip amount differ significantly from what's done in the past, or is that pretty standard?
No, that's pretty standard. It's $174 per truckload, which is, I think it's 9
There was a
euros.
lot of wood chips because of the park installation.
Oh, right. Okay, so I'll entertain a motion to approve petty cash.
I'll make a motion to approve petty cash in the amount of $3,566.596.
Yeah, fine.
I second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so monthly reports, and are you going first, Brian?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, monthly reports. My monthly report, the next 3.5 months at Ridgeville will be extremely busy. I asked the board to be aware of this because we are expanding programming. Some of the programs that you will see are the usual farmers market, T-ball on Monday and Wednesday, soccer on Tuesdays and Thursdays, 4th of July races at Cayman, actually East Park, Soccer Fest on July 13th. Shakespeare in the Park begins 6/21/19 and ends 8/11. Along with those programs, we'll also have expanded mini camps, bridge camps from July 29th through August 9th. We'll be tested and stretched to continue and produce quality summer programs. So just keep that in mind a little bit, that we are going to be very busy. Lighter Park's new play circuit will open very soon. It'll probably open tomorrow morning. We have some wood chips to move around and clean the circuit, and then I think we're going to take the fence down. We had a slight delay in finishing due to wet grounds. We can't drive the truck over the wet grounds with all the wood chips, tear up the ground. So we had a lot of rain, we had to slow down. We've begun our grass cutting cycle, normal week. You'll see Lighter, Cayman East and West cut on Tuesday. Reba, Elks, and Brummel will be cut on Wednesday. Ridgeville Park will be cut on Friday. As I already mentioned, the bills, 4 lilacs and 1 tree have been planted at Ridgeville, and 1 oak tree will be planted at Brummel Park. More lilacs coming for Brummel. And then I asked you to please check your agenda, which you did because you're all here on time. We got it going. Jerry Gibbs in a few minutes is going to go over bank accounts and he'll explain that process. Finally, petty cash went over. I explained that also. Ann Cavode approved that 2 weeks ago. Also, just give you an update, I've been in contact with Lisa Sparrow, the Commissioner AYSO, and she's more than happy that we'll open the washrooms at Cayman Fieldhouse, and she thinks that's enough, so we're going to give it a test run for AYSO soccer on Sundays.
What kind of tree was it beyond the lilacs that went in already?
2 oaks.
Oh, okay.
The experts tell me not to plant all the same trees because, so now we got 2 oaks. We had different trees we planted in the fall. In case disease hits one species, you still have trees in the park to vary it.
Okay, so Jerry's next.
Okay. In your package, you should have my normal monthly report. Notable activity this past month is that the Cook County Clerk's Office released the draft levy edit report on April 26th with the requirement that we review and approve it by May 3rd. We reviewed the levy figures that they input into the system to make sure that they match our ordinance that was passed last December, and we approved them for acceptance into the Cook County Clerk's database as of April 27th, well ahead of the deadline. In June, what will happen is we'll receive what's called the tax levy edit report. With that, they'll apply the Cook County Assessor's property valuations, the PTEL property tax extension limit law, the computation limits from that, and the final tax levy amounts and tax rates for the 2018 bills. So we'll find out, did we get the full amount we requested, or was it cut back because of PTEL? And that will be for money we receive in the next fiscal year. I'll now kind of go through the monthly reports. You've got an extra one in here, a normal monthly report, because we've got a couple of new commissioners. Rather than go through highlights on the report, I'm going to kind of take them one by one and talk in a little bit of depth about them so you know what you're looking at. The first report after the written report is the trial balance. It says general ledger trial balance at the top. This is more of a detailed balance sheet. It used to be the balance sheet that we distributed, and we went to a format that's a little more simplified because it matches the end of report, which we talked about in a moment. So I don't normally distribute the trial balances because it's a little overwhelming in the level of detail that's in it, but I wanted you to know it exists so you see the chart of accounts that the district has. The assets are listed at the top of the report. The liabilities and fund balances are the bottom half of the report. We have a number of funds in the district. The way they're classified in the accounting world is we have a couple of major funds. That's the corporate fund and the recreation fund. And then we have a series of what are known as minor funds. That's the IMRF fund, the Social Security fund, the liability insurance fund, the capital improvement fund, and the working cash fund. The corporate fund is our general, and really should read general on here. We've kind of been trying to update our terminology to kind of more current terminology.
Which one should be?
So the column labeled corporate on this is really the general
Okay.
fund or general corporate fund. It's kind of general purpose. The money, the revenue, the source of income into that fund is 100% property taxes. The recreation fund is a special purpose fund. The money there can only be used for recreational purposes. This is where we run our summer camps and all of our programs and the park maintenance and things like that. The revenue source for that fund is a number of things. The lion's share of it, again, is property taxes from residents of the district. We also charge, of course, fees for taking classes and participating in the program, so there's program revenue in there. And from time to time, we apply for grants and bring some grant money into that fund. The IMRF fund is for the retirement program, and that is 100% property tax funded. The Social Security is for the payment of Social Security taxes, and again, that's 100% property tax funded. The liability insurance fund is where our insurance is paid out of, and again, that's 100% property tax funded. And the reason these funds exist is because state law has limits on how much government bodies can spend on these kinds of things as far as a percentage of tax we can charge. If we didn't have those funds, it would all come out of our general fund and we'd hit cap limits there. So the law allows us to have these other funds as a way of having targeted expenditures there.
Mr. Gibbs, what law are you referring to?
This would be the Park District Code. Capital Improvement Fund is a fund that is funded by monies transferred into it from primarily the corporate fund, sometimes the recreation fund, and it's funded as we can get grants and bequests and all, other outside sources of monies into it. But no property taxes directly fund the Capital Improvement Fund. And the Working Cash Fund is a specialized fund. We have money in there, we have a balance in there. It was a one-time only deal where government agencies were able to tax properties, put working cash money into this fund. This fund cannot be touched, it cannot be used. It provides the cash reserves that keep us from being overdrawn in the course of the middle of the year or having to issue what are called tax anticipation warrants. So it just gives us working capital, because as you'll learn over time, we have periods of the year where we're bringing in lots of tax revenue, and then periods of the year where we're spending lots of money and no money coming in, and we find ourselves in a negative position. So this helps get us through. Going down the list of accounts on here, you'll see the accounts receivables are all zero. We generally never have a balance in the accounts receivables unless we've got a big, like CDBG grant that we have to recognize is coming but haven't received yet. That usually just crosses fiscal year boundaries when it's been approved but the money hasn't gotten here yet. Tax receivables by year, it's showing that we're still owed, for example, $9,800 from 2015 taxes. At this late date, it's unlikely we will ever see that money. We generally get our tax revenues in the calendar year after our fiscal year where we pass it. And then we get a little bit more in the following year, and then it trickles in. Like this year, we did receive some tax money, like 35 cents or something like that, going all the way back to 2009. But generally what happens is when we hit a point where we've gone 4 or 5 years out, we end up having to write that off. How we're compensated for the fact that a certain amount of our taxes never get collected and never reach us that we were anticipating is that Cook County, again, state law provides a provision whereby the Cook County clerk takes our ask for money and increases it by 3%, which is kind of an average loss rate. And so we kind of, whatever we ask for, we get it inflated a little bit, but then we end up losing it and giving it back at some point. So as long as it kind of falls around that 3%, we're kind of made whole. Sometimes it runs a little stronger, sometimes a little less, but you know, over time, we do okay. So that's why you see for 2018, we've got $325,000 we have not received yet. 2018's taxes will come in our next fiscal year. So this fall is when we will receive the $325,000. But we're spending that money already. So we're in a position where we're spending money, but our source of revenue for that money hasn't happened yet. And that's where our fund balances and our working capital come into play. Okay, the cash accounts are our bank accounts where we have our money parked for cash to pay the bills. So your corporate bills, you approved $90-some thousand tonight, that will go against that $354,000 balance in the general corporate account. Same with the petty cash, same with the payroll. The investment accounts are where we take whatever we don't need for day-to-day ready cash and we park it for investment purposes in some other banking relationships. It's a mix right now of CDs and money market accounts. We'll have a little more discussion later in the meeting about some of that. The due from lines are kind of more an accounting thing because of the funds. Notice all the bank balances are held in the general account. There is no bank account for the recreation fund and the other funds. So there's an accounting entry that transfers from the corporate side over to the funds the cash balances that are needed to foot those accounts out. Just know that due funds, due to, there's kind of accounting entries that make it appear like we have more money than we really do, but it makes the accounting work. It matches the government accounting standards board requirements. Under the liability side, we really don't have a lot down there that's a liability. We always, every month, have a little bit of an IMRF accounts payable. Most of our accounts payable accounts sit at 0 all year long, except at year end. We'll see when we get to year end, we'll have numbers in there, and that has to do with how we do accrual accounting between one fiscal year and the next. But most of the rest of the year, those amounts will be in 0. And there's the due to accounting, which is the opposite side of the due from accounting that was shown up on the asset side. We don't have any tax anticipation warrants. The deferred property tax due for the current year and prior years is basically the flip side of the tax receivables that were shown up in the assets. So again, it's kind of an accounting entry where it's just how government accounting works to flow the money onto the balance sheet. And then the fund balances are showing at this stage of the process, the fund balances as of the beginning of the fiscal year, and the line below it then shows what we're going to add to or subtract from those fund balances in the course of accounting as we get to year end. So kind of right now, that's just how the trial balance is, that you kind of manually add those two numbers together so you have to actually book the difference between revenue and appropriations in the fund balance itself. It's carried as a separate line item until we get there. So shifting from the trial balance to the balance sheet, which kind of you just turn the page and be there, don't look at the back side of the trial balance, that's something else. Just the balance sheet itself. It's basically the same numbers as what you saw on the trial balance, just in a much simplified form and summarized form. So for example, all the checking cash accounts are pulled together into a single number shown as cash. All the tax receivables are pulled together into a single number, taxes receivable, instead of spread by year. This report is exactly the same as you'll see in the district's annual report, which is in a very established format required for purposes of reporting to the state, to the county, and complying with GASB accounting standards. So it makes it look like our overall district has $2.3 million in assets. But if you really just consider what we have in cash and investments, that's the real tangible asset we have. That's much closer to $1 million. The additional ramp up of the numbers there is really just the accounting of the due from, the due tos, and the tax receivables that we haven't received yet. So don't think that, gee, we have $2.3 million to play. We have nowhere near that. That's pretty much, and then down at the bottom, the way the annual reporting goes, it just kind of highlights the fact that the general fund is unassigned, meaning we can use that money for any purpose. The recreation fund is an assigned purpose. By law, we can only use it for recreation purposes, not educational purposes, not other kinds of things. It's things that are defined as recreation. And same with the non-major funds. Whatever fund that is, pension money can only be used for pension. Social Security money can only be used for Social Security. We can't move money around between those funds. So the only fund that gives us a little flexibility to work with is what's in the general fund. Turning now to the statement of revenue and appropriations, which is on the back side of the trial balance. This is kind of the equivalent in government accounting of income and expense, but the language in governments is revenue for income and appropriations for expense. I show two sets of figures on this report. You see the budget for revenue and expenses, and that's kind of the left side of a column, and the right side of a column is the actual that we've received. It's a little misleading to show you the budget because we don't receive the budget money this year. We get half of it this year and half of it next year, and we're kind of doing an income and expense review here that gives you the impression that's all happening this year, and it's not. The offset to that is we are receiving tax money from prior years that's roughly equivalent to the amount of tax money we're not going to get this year that's going to come in a future time period. So it's close, but it will never match exactly.
Mr. Gibbs?
Yeah.
When did those payments get made?
As people make their payments to Cook County, to the clerk, so we throughout the month get deposits into our account. Tax bills go out generally February, March-ish, and again August, September-ish, and we see big chunks of money come in the February, March timeframe and the August, September timeframe. We'll get a sprinkle of money at other times of the year as people make late payments on their taxes, or there's action taken to collect taxes and things like that. But the lion's share of that's going to come in those two time windows.
And the county now is better at getting the tax bills out timely, so the money comes in fast.
It's they're having to wait on all the tax bodies to turn in their asks and their paperwork. They have to wait on the assessor to do the assessed valuation. They've got to wait on the state legislature to finalize the equalization factor. They've got a lot of variables and things they're dealing with. But as long as everybody's kind of in all the other areas doing their job, they're on time. When there's a fight down in Springfield, sometimes those fall tax bills show up a little late because they can't agree on one of the key variables needed for the fall tax bill. The spring tax bill is very, very reliably timed and received because it's simply 55% of whatever your actual bill last year was. So that's a known thing, and it's always the same. It's that second bill of the year that's the wild card. Going down the categories, so we've got our tax receipts this year, prior year, miscellaneous revenue, and that just Sometimes we get reimbursements from maybe staff buy something as a part of their purchase at the office supply store, and then they reimburse us for their personal portion of it, and other little things that pop in from time to time. Rental revenue is for things that, like when we rent out the field house, when we rent out garden plots. Program revenue are the registration fees. I'll pause and comment there. It looks like we are way over budget because we've got $148,000 in revenue versus a budget of $113. But by fiscal year end, we will have to reverse out accounts payable due to third-party vendors that run things like the cardboard camps and whatnot. That number is sitting at
about
25,000 right now. So that number is going to come down by 25,000 before we close out the fiscal year. Replacement tax revenue, maybe you can explain what that is.
Yeah.
It's kind of an alternative to property tax for certain types of commercial situations.
It goes back a long time. I think it's when we adopted the new constitution in the state of Illinois, there was a certain tax that was eliminated because of the new constitution, and they created this replacement tax that would allow municipalities to collect revenue to replace that tax money that they were losing. And it's not that great, and it should keep going down over the years and eventually reach zero.
We never know what we're supposed to get in there, so we kind of just always budget that by just kind of guessing what did we get last year and figure it'll be closer or a little less, and it just kind of over time can go down, but there we are. Other grant, if we apply for grants and get them, this will be recorded under the other grants, and I recently retitled that to be other grants, gifts, and bequests. And this past year, we were fortunate enough to be the beneficiary of, I forget how we say her name.
How do you pronounce her name? The woman who left us the money for the beautification.
Oh, Yvonne Vandehaven.
Vonda Haven, when she passed away, her estate left us $65,000 towards tree replacement, shrubbery replacement, parks beautification. So we've taken that into the capital improvement fund, and we'll track it over time as we complete those projects. That was an unanticipated receipt of money this budget year.
Was it for specific parks, or was it for?
All parks.
Oh.
With a little emphasis on Broadway.
Yeah.
Our interest this year.
I'll show you that tomorrow.
Our interest is interest we've earned on our investments. We're running way over budget this year just because we got lucky in opening up a new bank account last year where we got a one-year promotional teaser rate that'll evaporate in another 2 months, and we'll see that income drop off a bit. Appropriations are the things we spent money on. Those are the bills that you approve every month. And we're going to turn our attention in a moment to the appropriations ledger. That is basically the sub-ledger of this number. So this number is everything we're expending, and then the appropriations ledger is going to break down how that money is being spent. You turn to the appropriations ledger now. There's two formats to it. I've got a detailed format on one side. I've got a summary format on the other side. I'm trying to nudge us towards the more summary version. The summary version is again in alignment with our annual reporting and kind of just seeing how other park districts do their accounting. It's consistent with how they do it. Our detailed version was kind of a nice idea, but an over-engineered solution to a problem that didn't really exist and actually is a little problematic and misleading in some ways. So I'll talk a little bit more about that in the budget process, but it's the same numbers on each side, just summarized a little bit differently, showing by fund where the money is going out, showing what the budget is as far as what was passed in the ordinance, and how we're doing relative to that as we get near our fiscal year end. The last report I've got in the packet is the outstanding items report. There's basically two types of outstanding items. Part of my duty is to take the daily activities of what goes on in the district, match them up against the bank accounts of the district, and identify the discrepancies, as well as classify and post them into the general ledger. Discrepancies are when you have approved something, but the money has never come out of our bank accounts. So we've given checks to people, and for whatever reason, they haven't cashed their checks. If that goes on long enough, we are required by law to give that money to the state of Illinois as unclaimed property. It's not our property, it's that party's property. We have to turn it over to the unclaimed property division. We really never want something to get to that point because it's a bureaucratic nightmare to have to do that. So we've managed all these years to never have to turn over unclaimed property by staying on top of our outstanding items and clearing them off. So you'll notice there's nothing terribly stale on that report. The other type of outstanding item is something has been charged to our bank accounts and it has not come before you for a vote. By our ordinance and by Park District Code, we're not supposed to spend money on anything unless you have voted on it and approved it. Modern world being the modern world, we have automatic debits out of our accounts, we have utility bills that are paid electronically, we have debit cards, we have petty cash emergency needs. We don't want to have to call a special board meeting for. So little amounts of money do get spent before they've been presented to you for approval and a vote. We kind of got a blanket approval over it. That's why Brian talked about all he had to spend beyond what his blanket approval was this past month. Items of both of these types normally are going to self-resolve within 30 days because they're just timing issues. Somebody was issued a check right at month end, and so they cashed it next month, and we're looking at the statement as of that month, that next month it'll clear up and be gone. Likewise, things we spent money on after the last board meeting are now in the bills report that you approved at this board meeting. They'll come off in the next accounting period. The only time an item on here is of real concern is if it's sat there for more than 2 board meetings. And then Jessica is usually charged with trying to hunt down what went wrong and figure out what do we have to do to get it resolved. So we work very closely together on all those outstanding items all the time. That is the report from the Treasury Department.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You make yours short?
Yep, short and sweet. In May, we are celebrating Asian Pacific American Heritage Month. We're having a book discussion on All You Can Ever Know, a memoir by Nicole Chang. Ridgeville Readers Book Club meets this month, May 19th. Everybody is welcome and encouraged to join us. You can take a peek at our celebration board on our website for other events and celebrations in May. I mentioned last time, and I had gone that day, so I didn't really get to talk to everybody about it, but I went to the YWCA Equity Summit. Per Martha's request, I typed up a little summary of my day with them. I went to 3 breakaway workshops that day. The first one was a way forward for organizations, a strategic approach to achieving equity that was presented by Gloria Wood of the Kaleidoscope Group. The second workshop I went to was history and overview of racial healing circles. That was done by the Chicagoland Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation team. And then finally, I went to the community-based advocacy engagement strategies for equity, and that was presented by the Latinos Progresando. And I also was able to listen to the keynote speech by Dr. Gail Christopher, who is a social change agent. She's actually from Evanston. And she was the architect of the TRHT, which is the Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation. It was a really great experience. I'm not going to read through this, but you can take a peek at that. I learned about the Equity Summit because I had reached out to Tiffany McDowell, who is the director of the Equity Division with the YWCA, to talk to her about some collaboration opportunities between Ridgeville and the YW. She met with Brian and I, we sat down and had a great conversation. She offered that the YWCA could do some seminars with us and some other outreach things, and sent me a proposal for those. So that is attached. It was not in my original packet, but it is in there for you now. Additionally, after that meeting with her, and after the last board meeting, William, as he mentioned, William and Malika stopped by the office. We had a conversation. They also provided a proposal to do some equity, racial equity and diversity consulting with us and some outreach. So that proposal is also included in my packet for you. And in conversations with some of you individually and with Brian, I also reached out for a proposal from a company called Blue Sky Enterprises, which is led by a gentleman named Mike Simmons, and he also provided a proposal. So you have 3 in your packet to take a peek at. We can talk about that at some point, but those are there for you. Summer staff orientation. Our summer staff orientation is scheduled for July 1st. A calendar for orientation is attached. You can take a peek at what that day of training will look like. We've added, Dr. Laura Downey is coming in to do some pro-social skill training with our staff. She'll spend about an hour with them talking about pro-social skills, what that means, which is really about empathy and empowerment when working with campers of all ages and developmental stages. Additionally, Ida Nolan will join us, and we're going to do a workshop on working with kids with a variety of special needs. We'll end the day with our EpiPen training, and our CPR and AED certification. Also, Commissioner Coyne had asked me to put together, this is also in your packet, put together a list of residence demographics for our summer staff. So I won't go through all of it, but you can see here, out of the 33 summer staff that we have hired as of today, 19 of those 33 employees live in Ridgeville Park District, and 32 of the 33 live in Evanston.
So the orientation is June 1st?
It is. June 1st, and then we're doing an additional training with the directors on June 3rd as well. So there's 2 training days for our directors. Our half-day workshops went super well this year. JC Herman is here, did an awesome job with all the kids. We had a record number of kids enroll. I brought in one of our other staff members, Jasmine Dreller, to assist. She was excellent. We wrapped up the workshops this year on May 1st. Our farmers market will begin on the 5th of June. So soon. We have 3 confirmed vendors this year. We've got Lions Fruit Farm joining us again, Cat's Cookies, and then also C&D Family Farms, which is a meat vendor. They'll be with us this year. We have 2 additional vendors that are considering joining us, and I expect will. One of them is B Production, which is a baked goods vendor, and a third that is salsa. They're a salsa and candle vendor, and they also have some produce as well. We're also offering home delivery again this year.
It's salsa and candles?
Yeah, I know. It's a strange combination, but welcome. And then finally, I won't go through this, you can take a peek, but I've got the lineup for our Shakespeare on the Ridge and our concerts on the Ridge. The Mudlark this year is doing As You Like It, that'll be in June. The Arc Theater is doing a Midsummer Night's Dream, that'll be July and August. And then we have 6 bands booked. That'll be on Wednesday evenings overlapping the farmers market starting July 10th. That's it.
Great.
Anybody have any questions for Natalie at all? So, so Jessica, your report is next? You don't have anything? Okay. Okay, so then, old business item of a Leader Park update?
I already kind of gave it. Oh, sorry.
Lighter?
Lighter. I already kind of gave it to you. We hope to open the park tomorrow. I think we're pretty much done with the wood chips. We're going to organize, clean the area, seed the spots that needed seeded around the park, and probably open up by tomorrow afternoon. If not tomorrow afternoon, certainly Monday.
Okay, so we've got a personnel policy update.
Yeah.
Is that something that you're speaking on? Okay.
I'll talk to you real quick about that. So you have in your packets, and it says in the lower right corner, it's a draft dated May 8th, 2019. So we don't get this confused with any other personnel policies out there. There's not a whole lot to say. What I need you to do is take a peek at this over the next month. I'm going to meet with the staff. There's several things in here, nothing major, that have changed over the last 10 years, or even longer, from the old personnel policy that need to be updated in here. One's like vacation time, IMRF, stuff like that. So we'll get that together for you so we can continue on a monthly basis to chip away at this and maybe pass it in the very near future. So if you could take a look at this, that would be great.
So in terms of this being a draft and with changes, do you have noted here, and if not, do you have a place where it's noted what's the new content? Or does it not really matter? Should we just view it?
Go in with a clean slate.
Okay.
This was the policy we adopted.
No, it wasn't adopted.
It wasn't.
No.
No.
It said adoption. Somebody jumped the gun when they typed in adopted.
So this is
Yeah.
the
No, yeah.
Draft.
draft.
Go by the first page. That's a typo.
This is a typo.
Yeah, adoption date, no, that's wrong.
On the last page, that's the part that's
On
wrong?
the second page.
Yeah, it's on almost every
It's on every page but the first page.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
If you notice up at the top.
just go by the.
Okay, so look
bottom
at this month, and we are hoping to adopt this and finalize this at the,
No.
Oh, no.
We'll take our time, 2-3 months, we'll,
Okay.
hopefully.
And
You wanna
is
rush.
Mr. Valenti involved in this process?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, I was.
So what's here incorporates everything that's kind of current
No.
law? It doesn't.
Oh,
So how do we-
legally?
Yeah,
Legally, it's up to date.
it doesn't.
Right.
Yes.
Sure.
Go ahead.
We're talking about the draft personnel policy.
Correct.
My question is, on some of the papers of the draft personnel policy, it states at the top, adoption date, January 11th, 2018.
Mr. Valenti just clarified that that is incorrect.
Go by draft on the bottom right hand corner.
That this is a draft policy as of yesterday, May 2019, and that there will be additional changes prior to,
We'll correct that.
My question is this, the adoption date, January 11th, 2018, was that a mistake?
Yeah.
yes.
Yes.
Oh, okay, thank you.
So Dan, my computer skills perhaps are not as good as they should be. I managed to take it off the front page, but somehow I didn't manage to take it off the remaining pages.
Clerical error.
Okay, so bring to the next meeting any concerns or any questions, and we're gonna continue editing?
Right.
Okay. Okay, so a discussion of forming some committees at the Ridgeville Park District is actually the next item on the agenda, and this is something that I added to the agenda. It's actually through my husband's experience on 2 different committees with the city of Evanston that we kind of came up with the idea that it's something we'd love to see happening at Ridgeville. It's really pretty simple and straightforward, actually, that if we as a board or the community or all collectively together feel that there are some issues that need some additional work beyond the scope of what we can achieve in any one board meeting, even though we meet monthly. Obviously, there's a limit to what all we can squeeze into these nights. So I just would love to see us start to discuss and form some committees for specific purposes of exploring ways in which we can get better. And there's all kinds of things that can fall into that type of category. Definitely, exploring all of the entities that are out there for the purpose of doing trainings and workshops, and this is a new term to me, but the racial healing circle? Okay. There's obviously some work to be done. I feel that way. People in the community feel that way. I mean, that's definitely a positive direction for us to be heading, to focus on those things. And like I said, I mean, if there's other committees that form, people want to see a dog park happen, a committee could form for that. I mean, really, it can be anything. We are, elected officials as the board, and then the park district has employees, some part-time, some full-time. And then there's the community, and we haven't really had any formal connections to the community so far. And I view committees to be a way to do that because there would be, members, there would be order and structure, there would be goals and timelines for achieving certain goals. As we saw tonight, a lot of people have a lot to say, and that's great, but it's time to take it to the next step and focus on some actual action. Some of the individuals who spoke tonight are perfect examples of community members that I personally would love to see step up even further as committee members and work together with, we would probably have 1 or 2 board members, no more than 2, or it would violate the Open Meetings Act. But 1 or 2 board members per committee, and then we have that group outside of our board member, or outside of our board meetings, focusing on issues, generating ideas, making suggestions, and then that gets delivered back at board meetings, so that again, we're not doing all of the work within the context of a board meeting, we're doing some work outside. So this is just really like, the reason it's on the agenda is I just wanted to throw it out there. And then we're already it's a long meeting tonight, so we can kind of push further discussion to the next month, or if anyone has anything to say, it sounds like you do. Yeah.
I do. Robert's Rules addresses committees.
Okay.
It clarifies there's 2 different types: standing committees, which are made up of board members and have ongoing responsibilities, and then ad hoc committees that are set up for a specific purpose with a specific goal. It sounded more along the lines of what you were getting at.
Mm-hmm.
The ad hoc committees. I think it's a great idea, and a lot of the concerns and issues I think could be well organized in committees.
I was also looking at the IAPD committees, and this would obviously be separate than the committees that we form, but they of course have their own committees. And some of this stuff just felt spot on for some of the work that we need to do here too. So general committee guidelines, it says investigate and provide the facts that demonstrate the need for committee action, analyze the facts and determine appropriate courses of action, implement plans and ensure a positive end result within a specified time frame, and make final recommendations to the policy-making body, which would be us as a board. So, I hear that some of the issues that are being talked about in citizen comment, some of them tend to be, and this is not a criticism, tend to be the same thing over and over again. Well, instead of just continuing to have conversations or comments, again, kind of taking the next step towards action and working together, you can just be a passionate member of the community, and that's all it takes if you want to get involved. You could also have personal relevant experience to the topic that committee is on. You could have professional relevant experience to the topic that committee is on, or all of the above. So I just would love to see the community get involved more and collectively kind of move us in some good directions. So. But it sounds like I have some research to do about, any rules that exist around forming committees and, how we would do that. The only thing I noted so far, of course, is that we can't have more than 2 board members on any one committee.
Well, you could have a committee comply with the Open Meetings Act.
Yes.
So I think the committees might have to comply with the Open Meetings Act.
So like advertising it publicly and just making it open to the community and things like that, so that it's...
Posting agenda.
Okay.
Keeping a record.
Okay, which is a great idea, especially if we feel there's justification for 3 or more board members being on any one committee. And then I was reading up a little bit on, some of the technical definitions of being a board president, and it says that I would sort of be an ex officio member of all committees, and it just sort of helped to make sure I know what's going on with all the committees, so that's something that I plan to do. So like I said, I just wanted to initiate discussion tonight on that, and I'm going to do some more work on fleshing out exactly what that looks like and finding out any limitations or rules we have to be compliant with and stuff like that.
So, quick item.
Yeah.
How would you like us to proceed on equity training and outreach?
Well, I think that we have done some really good initial work by getting quotes from people, like I'm sorry, I forget the name of the Blue Sky. William Eason and Malika Gardner have given us a proposal as well, and then the YW is offering all kinds of resources. So when I think of what a committee would do in that particular context or on that topic, I envision them kind of looking even deeper into what other options are out there, making sure, just like we would with anything that we're going to get a quote for and spend some money and, try to improve in some way. I just want to make sure that we're, I don't want to move slowly on these issues. Obviously, some action needs to take place as soon as possible, but I want to make sure that we're doing it in a smart, organized way, and that everybody who feels passionate about it, community members included, feels good about the direction that we're going. So I feel like we're in some very initial stages right now, but I would love for some of the work that Natalie has already done to be picked up by a committee and taken further down the road. So as to what that will look like specifically, I think that's part of the process of a committee setting goals and timelines for those goals. So I don't really have that answer right now.
Can we set a committee in June?
Yeah, I think it would be a great goal at the June meeting to specify some actual committees and form them. Yeah? In compliance with Open Meetings Act, and as we see fit, we can discuss it, between now and June too, and kind of. So I think it would also be important to establish a way in which we reach out to the community. Obviously, those of you in the audience here hear me, and now you know what I'm talking about. But and the video is helpful too. But we should establish some sort of outreach, and just getting stuff out to the community is really important. People need to know that we're doing this in order to get involved. So we can kind of brainstorm, and hopefully Natalie and Brian can help with that in terms of steps we can take to.
Because the other thing, at some point in time in the near future, you're going to set the budget.
Mm-hmm.
And if there's going to be an expenditure on that, we need.
It's a good point.
We need to get to it.
I don't see the committees themselves necessarily having a cost, but
Right.
I would say that the work that they suggest that the Park District officially say, okay, this is what we're going to do, those outcomes, of course, will have costs associated with them.
I think I would like to plan the budget for some equity consulting.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
The three proposals that I've received, and I can certainly look into anything you want me to look into.
Mm-hmm.
But they are, all three of them, pretty significant amounts of money. So it is something that will need to be looked at in terms of budgeting.
And I also had a lengthy conversation, an awesome conversation with Tiffany McDowell, who heads the Equity Institute that was just formed in the past year, she said. And, unfortunately, for the timing of this meeting, I just spoke to her 2 days ago. And so, in terms of even revisiting my notes, let alone taking next step, I'm not there yet. But it sounds like the YW, I'll just put this out there, it sounds like they not only have a lot of resources that will help us in some of the ways that it sounds like we want and need, but they have sort of a great offering overall, such that they really help guide you, through the processes that it sounds like we would be going through. So I have a great feeling about going with them, but I feel, again, like that we're not anywhere near kind of making a decision on that yet. So, yeah. Anyone else have any
Do we have all the
commentary?
information from the line? Do we have?
She sent me kind of an initial proposal and an outline of what that looks like. What she and I had discussed when we met the first time was that she would really sit down with us and develop, and I don't know if you had the same conversation with her, but that she would really create a program, not just seminars for staff and for board, but also a community component, and then also programming, something that would come from that, that really catered to our specific needs and conversations. So what she's provided, and you'll see, is kind of a general overview of what that looks like, what the Equity Institute has set in motion currently, but she will adjust it to Ridgeville's needs and requests.
Yeah, and if I can just expand on that a little bit, I did ask her questions like, given what we had talked about, and I knew she had talked to you already too, I said, do you think that all of the resources that you offer at the Equity Institute is something that we should do, or do you think that you're going to tell us which ones we would do? Is there a certain order to the way we would do it? I asked her questions like that, and she kind of came up with, in her answer, the idea that there's this pre-workshop also called an organizational racial equity workshop that would be a sense-making first step. Then an assessment, and the assessment itself is kind of a different, I'm not gonna go into that too much right now, but she made a very clear and good case for why that's a necessary step. And then after that, like you say, a tailored approach to what we need and why. And then certainly with a goal of setting us up as an institution that is prepared and trained and ready to do a lot of the work ourselves, but that they're also there, because she said that what they've seen already is that a lot of institutions go through some of their trainings and workshops and the other resources that they offer and feel like, okay, now we've learned a lot and we know what our next steps are. And then nonetheless, there comes a point in time shortly thereafter where they feel like, wait, we actually need some more help. We need some more guidance. We're not as sure about what our next steps are as we thought we were. And then it's really cool that they're still there. They're still there to help guide you and that kind of stuff. Because if we're going to put this intention in this and put this money towards this, I want to make sure that we're not just doing this for lip service or to look at on paper, but to make some actual positive change. So again, the YW sounds like they're really well set up to help us in some of the ways that we're talking about. So yeah.
So we'll keep this on the agenda, obviously.
Yeah. I think perhaps it might even be a good idea for her, if she's willing, or somebody from the YW to come and sort of do a presentation or explain exactly what it is that we're thinking about moving forward with. And because our meetings are televised, so to speak, at least for people on Facebook, that would be a good way for the community to hear about it too, if they don't already know what the YW is offering in that way. So.
Should I invite Mike as well to do something like that?
I think so, yeah.
He's actually from he grew up around the James Park area, so he is familiar with Evanston too, so. But I could certainly invite him if.
How was it that you got onto that particular organization?
He was recommended to me by a friend.
Okay.
Isn't that what the committee's going to do?
Yeah, so I mean, you make a good point. I feel like the committee isn't going to do the work and the board does nothing. You know what I mean? Right. But we want to be careful about being duplicative also, that we're not, doing work at the same time as the committee's doing work. The whole point is that the committee is supposed to be officially connected and clearly connected, doing some work outside of our meetings. And then I view it to be sort of like reporting back, to the decision-making body, which is what we are. And we then, can benefit from the work and resource and talking and discussion, et cetera, that takes place. Make informed decisions based on that. So, given that the committees don't exist yet, I don't want to see us as a board doing nothing. So I think in the beginning, it's going to be forming committees simultaneously while we're also looking into the things we're already starting. If that makes sense. Yeah.
If you need me to help facilitate that in any way between now and the next meeting, just let me know.
Okay. I'll take any help that you offer, you know that.
You know where to find me.
Okay, so moving on from committee discussion, we've got from Jerry the introduction to the 2019-2020 tentative budget?
Yes.
Okay.
And honestly, normally this would be Brian's presentation, because he's the guy that comes up with the numbers, and he's the guy that has to live with managing the district according to these numbers. Part of the reason I'm going to do the discussion tonight is you've been given two versions of the budget. One, and it's a matter of formatting. One is in the traditional format we've used in the past. It's where you've got a separate packet for the corporate fund and one for the recreation fund. And then a more concise version. The reason in terms of budget process, normally all we're doing at this point is introducing a tentative budget early in the game. September, you're going to pass an ordinance. I like to kind of describe it each month from now until September, the concrete is going to harden. The closer we get to September, the harder it is to change the numbers. It's a very living document right now, open to discussion, revision, adding things, deleting things, changing things, whatever. So, now next month in July, I really encourage you as commissioners to be engaged in the budget process. Get everything in. For example, all the equity and diversity, all the things we're talking about as far as board development and district development, get those numbers in the budget.
Can I ask you a question actually about that?
Yes.
You were talking earlier about, what we're allowed to spend money from certain funds on and what we're not allowed to spend money from certain funds on. Just right off the bat, where are we going to be getting the funding for equity stuff?
To my mind, that's got to come out of the corporate fund.
Okay.
It's not a recreation issue.
Right.
So it's got to be a corporate fund kind of issue.
Okay.
Which currently today, we're just structured there to pay for that from property taxes. So the property owners in the district will be the ones paying for that. That's not to say that if we identified a grant, we couldn't create a grant revenue account in the corporate fund. We are allowed to do that.
Okay.
We just have not traditionally had any grant revenue into that particular fund.
Okay.
But that's an option. So if the Evanston Community Foundation gave us money for it, we could do that. The traditional format has each segment of it. You have the corporate fund and the recreation fund. The first page is the summary of all the accounts for that fund, and then you have each of those with the detail behind the number. So, for example, office supplies, says, okay, $5,500 for office supplies. When you turn the page and go down to the office supply section, you see how that number was arrived at, what were all the details behind getting to it. Same thing on the recreation side. The issue is we have a lot of accounts for a very granular level of accounting and detail that, and I've talked with the former treasurer, Dean Skeen, about kind of how did this come to be and what was, and I kind of guess because I know Dean well. He was, once upon a time kind of trying to get to a cost accounting approach to doing all this stuff, and we really aren't doing cost accounting, and so it's kind of an over-engineered accounting structure, especially when you look at what other park districts do with theirs. The problems with this level of detail are, one, we don't, for example, keep an employee in one of these categories here. We'll have somebody working and they'll do a little time over here, they'll do a little time over there, and we don't really have a great way to track that money. So even as we report some of the numbers in here, they're not accurate. There was a thought that it would be, but in practice, it's just too worky to do that. Same thing on the supply side. The challenge is when we're down to this level of detail, then by law we can't borrow from one category to pay another category if we're a little over in this one, a little under that one. I mean, there's mechanisms where you can, but it's not easy to do. It makes it unnecessarily complicated to have that day-to-day operational flexibility.
And does that go down to the granular detail of specific things or
the accounts,
line item?
The accounts on the summary page. And we can put whatever we want in the line items behind it. It's really the summary page of accounts. I want to simplify that chart of accounts down to the version that you see where you've got the recreation, corporate, the general, and the recreation fund and the capital fund all summarized on one page.
So this would be,
and if you look at the appropriations ledger, it's kind of the difference between the complicated side and the simplified side.
What you're showing us right now, what is that?
That's the condensed version.
A condensed, it's
Do we have that?
numbers, it's just summarized differently. It was distributed in, it should be in your folders tonight. Upper left-hand corner, it says condensed goods sample.
No, I didn't get a folder. I just have my packet.
It's in your file.
There you go.
Yeah, I didn't get one.
I did.
Okay, that's the condensed.
Has everyone got one now?
So this is where you're
I didn't get
basically.
This is where I would recommend we have it. So I'd like to,
Would this be this year or?
yes,
Okay.
yes. So I'd like you to kind of like, okay, you saw it, but this is going away. This is what I'd like us to consider each month going forward. Unless somebody has a real valid point that, you know what, we summarized too much, like can we break these two categories out or something, I'm open to that.
You're still breaking it down behind these numbers.
Exactly. You're still seeing the same level of detail as to how we arrived at those numbers. So, and it's the same numbers. It's just how are they summarized to get up to the accounting reports at the treasury level and into the annual report and everywhere else we got to report. And it just kind of, we got more flexibility to work within the big numbers here and the fewer categories in the course of the year. If operationally we spent more on the Easter egg hunt and less on the Halloween festivities, as an example of something kind of crazy like that.
So are you proposing that we should actually condense even the, like still have subcategories and specificity to
This would
it?
be your list of categories.
Okay.
Okay. The level of detail is as shown in mine. Now, I think the very last page, shows you which accounts we're combining. So for example, we're combining accounts 34, 35, 36, and 41 as program wages instead of summer camp wages, arts camp wages, this camp wage, whatever those account numbers correspond to. Similarly with maintenance, we've got maintenance wages spread across a couple categories. They'll get collapsed into a single category. Same with part-time wages. And the collapsing here is exactly what the auditors do when they take our numbers and then reformulate them to go into the annual report and do the reporting there.
So that we get these numbers back from them basically, and therefore in this same format.
Exactly. So it kind of just takes us more directly to the annual report version of things. Won't save any money on the audit.
What did you say where the summary of the combinations are? I didn't catch that.
The front page, right?
The front page has the general fund at the top.
Right.
The recreation fund at the bottom. And as you turn the page, then it's going to have, the general fund has the details broken out across 2 pages, and the recreation fund, the page numbering got a little screwy, but it's 3 pages of recreation fund.
The last page has the combined.
I see you're saying total and then.
Right.
Okay. Okay, I get it.
So take a look at it. We can have more discussion on it next month. This isn't cast in concrete by any means. I just wanted you to understand why you got 2 versions, why I'm trying to migrate from this version to that version, and we'll take it 1 month at a time from here till September.
I think it would be helpful for the new board members to understand too, sort of the sequence. You said in June and July, heavy focus. But after July, you were able to give us the summary of the various accounts and how much we spent or didn't spend. So you have a better sense.
There's an exercise that Brian and I do near the end of August. It takes, our fiscal year ends June 30th. And at the July board meeting, you will approve some accounting entries that impact that closing, and you will at the August board meeting approve some more accounting entries that affect that June 30th date. Once those are posted, and I'm able to process the months of July and August, then I've got the actual closing figures for the actual fiscal year, and I can compare the actuals that we spent in this fiscal year to the budget that we're spending. So it's a reasonability check. If Brian's suddenly in a category doubling the amount he wants to spend, we have a discussion. What's that all about? And I'm just kind of looking for, okay, do things look reasonable? The second thing we're doing, what you don't have in your packet tonight, is there's a document called Exhibit A. Exhibit A is a required page of the appropriations ordinance that shows how we intend to pay for this. It doesn't actually authorize the paying for it, but it's our roadmap to how we're going to pay for this budget. And the other part of that exercise then is to see, do things balance out? Is what we're asking for likely to be able to be covered by a property tax increase that falls within the PTEL law limits and our revenue projections for what we're going to do on programs and things? That's often a good session if you want to kind of watch the paint dry, to sit in on as new commissioners and just kind of see us as we go through it and have a discussion. Sometimes we have more than 2 commissioners that want to sit in on that process. If that happens, we then have to declare it a public meeting, and so we'll deal with that when we get to August, but just know that opportunity is coming up, and that's a good thing to go through. That Exhibit A document's key. We'll perhaps have some type of a rough draft of it in the June or July presentation of the budget, but you'll continue to be presented with tentative budgets each month until we pass the actual ordinance in September.
Can I give you a quick summary of the corporate fund and the recreation fund and what I put in the budget based on previous discussions? I'm gonna go off the non-condensed budget. Okay, so some of the, I'm just gonna go over the large items, not the standard stuff that we always do. So we have a need to overhaul our website. So in CA 13, on the corporate side, I'm sorry, it's not CA 13. CA 15, I'm sorry. We have $10,000 in there for website expense. We need a major overhaul, and if we can do it for less, we will do it for less, but we're behind on that. That's one of the items in there. I added money to the association expense and conference, so more new commissioners can go, more people can go, so that's built in. On the recreation side, RA 17, playground and park equipment. We've talked about adding park benches throughout the park that sit on concrete, nice stuff. I wrote that in. Also in R17, I wrote in recycling bins, the good stuff which we sorely need that don't blow around. They're fairly expensive. They're at Brummel now. So if you want to see what we're talking about, Brummel Park has them.
Which line item was that again?
What's that?
Which line item was the recycling?
RA 17.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Still.
Yeah,
Okay.
and then our little tot lot where the alleys meet behind, is it the 1000 block of Seward? Yeah, 1000 block of Seward. There's an outdated swing set. So actually, our risk services came out and said, please remove that. So we're going to remove it. And then the question is, do you want to replace something in that little tot lot, piece of play equipment? I wrote in $3,500 for that. So that swing set's going to be disappearing very soon. And it's older than me, so, or close to it. Then of course, with all the expansion and camps and programs, we had to add to the wages on the recreation side, so we can have people working those programs. So you'll see a little addition in there. And then R49 after-school program. I know the question would come up. It's built into the budget. It'll be in its third year. And those are the major things I added. Oh, I'm sorry. There's one more big one. CA 51, building improvements. That's on the corporate side. Going to finish the roof on the garage art studio. That's built in. Those are the majors.
I'll comment on the after-school program, RA 49. The first year we did that came up as an unbudgeted expenditure, and so we had unspent money in some other categories, and we kind of borrowed that money to make it happen that year. We didn't have a formal account set up for it. Last year's budget, we created an account for it and called it the after-school program. In the coming year, I'm going to be retitling that as an intergovernmental transfer for the after-school program, because that's actually county-wise what it's all about. We're transferring money from the Park District to the city of Evanston. We're not actually running the program.
So what I'm asking you to do is look at this. You can look at on either budget you want to look at, but look at the large items. Come to the board meeting in June. We discuss more of the tentative budget. Anything you don't like, anything you do like, anything you want to add, something you want to subtract.
And did we need to make a decision in terms of going from this version to this version, or are you just letting us know?
I'm letting you know now, and
Okay.
it's open for discussion. So by the time we write the ordinance for passage in September, we need a decision. What chart of accounts do you want? So I would ask that you work with the summarized version and make amendments to that if any are needed.
Is the summarized version going to affect any actual expenditure of money?
No.
It's just a formatting issue?
Yes.
Okay,
It's an account structure and formatting issue. that's
okay.
all.
And you prefer
The short
The
version.
summary. It does look.
I think it'll be easier for the office day-to-day to accurately record expenses. It will serve what reporting requirements we have, and just more generally flexible to work with.
Okay, so we're moving to discussing and authorizing the update to the bank account
Yes.
signers.
Because we have a new president and we have a new vice president, Ann Cavode and Rob Beatty can no longer sign our checks, so we need to get them off the bank accounts. I distributed ahead of the meeting a couple samples of a couple resolutions that I would like to propose that the board pass tonight and sign off on. After the meeting here, I'll get signatures on it, assuming we pass them. One resolution is about the changing the signers. So it's the one that says, as a result of their expiration of their terms in office, Robert Beatty and Ann Cavode shall be removed as authorized signers for the Ridgeville Park District bank accounts at the following financial institutions. And as a result of their election to the positions of President and Vice President of the Board of Commissioners, Martha Gaines as President and Debbie Braun as Vice President be added as the authorized signers, and that the District Treasurer, myself, is authorized and directed to coordinate the execution of the appropriate documents with those financial institutions to make these changes effective as soon as possible.
I'll make a motion to approve that resolution.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Related to that, I have a document for ADP. We have our payroll checks auto-signed, digitally signed. We need to change that process, and so we have their authorization form. So after the meeting, I need signatures. I will also get the ADP signature for the payroll account on that. The next resolution is related, kind of moving on the agenda, to the Illinois Funds Investment Account. We have, as you look back at the financial reports, we're carrying more than $250,000 in our cash accounts right now at Chase, which means we've got money that is not insured by the FDIC, and that's in violation of our investment policy and Illinois public funds policies. We monitor that, and a little overage once in a while isn't a big deal, but it's mainly because of the big bequest that we got. That about a year ago, we opened up a new account relationship and moved a lot of money to get back under the limit. We've gone over the limit again. It's been kind of persisting for a while, so we really need another bank relationship to do that with. When we did this exercise a year ago, I proposed that in addition to opening up a new banking relationship, we did it with Wintrust at that time, that we also consider opening an account relationship with the state of Illinois Treasurer's pooled investment product called the Illinois Funds. It's a vehicle that's been around since the 1970s for governments to pool their cash and invest it. So it's not an insured fund, but it's invested in very short-term instruments. It's never lost value since 1975. It returns a good rate of return. It's a whole heck of a lot easier for us to work with than all these multiple banking relationships. So we did, kind of did the bank thing last year. We moved to follow through getting it set up. I'd like to take the opportunity now that we're back at this step again to get that relationship established and start using it. So the second resolution, and I've talked with the folks at the state of Illinois about it. They're much easier to work with setting up the relationship. The bank relationships are, I typically have to get the attorneys involved to get us the bank relationships opened because it's public funds and the local banks and branches don't understand public funds, and it's just a big nightmare. And like with Chase right now, it used to be you could go into the local branch. I have to deal with public funds experts down in the state of Arizona to get everything done. So it's just, it would be a much easier process for us as a district to have this. I don't think we have great risk putting the money in there, and I actually think we get a greater return on our money than we're getting with our existing bank relationships. So the resolution is that at present, we have cash balances and bank relationships in excess of FDIC insurance limits. No room exists in any current investment accounts to reduce those cash balances to be within FDIC limits. We have a need to establish an additional investment account relationship to provide for compliance with our investment policy and the public fund requirements of the state of Illinois. Therefore, the treasurer, as the chief investment officer, shall be authorized and directed to establish an account relationship with the Illinois State Treasurer's government investment pool known as the Illinois Funds, and the district treasurer himself is authorized and directed to coordinate the execution of the appropriate documents with the Illinois State Treasurer to establish this relationship as soon as possible and to initiate the balance transfers necessary to bring our cash balances into compliance with the district's investment policy and the Illinois Public Fund requirements for our safety of principal, liquidity, rate of return, and diversification. I should say safety of principal there.
I have a question.
Yes.
I understand that the ease of dealing with them and all of those logistics is a concern, but in terms of being in violation because of being above a certain amount of FDIC insurance, wouldn't that just mean that if there's a loss, the overage is not insured, but the original amount
Right.
is? And if we're proposing that we would move the money to a place that has no insurance, then what's the difference between those two situations from an insurance or a compliance standpoint?
From the compliance standpoint, we can't do that in a bank, but we can do that in an investment pool.
Okay.
The state law is explicitly written that way to allow for
Okay.
that. And it's because of the type of financial instruments they invest in, being very short term, generally of a maturity of a week or less.
Okay.
Well, when would the transfer of funds occur?
When we get the account set up.
You get the account set up first.
Yes.
And will we know when the transfer occurs, or will we be told that there's an amount that's going to be transferred from my line or from Chase or whatever?
Well, we would initiate the transfer. I mean, we just.
You would initiate?
I would initiate the transfer.
Oh,
I mean,
resolution.
we can do it one of two ways. I mean, I'm just trying to get it all in one step so it's done before we get to our fiscal year, or I can get the account set up, come back to you next month for a vote on the transfer portion and do with the vote. I read our investment policy, and our investment policy basically gives me that authority now to just, as long as it's from a park district account to a park district account, to move wherever I feel we ought to be in order to be in compliance with the policy. But
would all our accounts be closed at one time? Are you talking about transferring?
No. I'm just talking about taking the excess money at the Chase Bank and moving it over. As a separate step, I'll come to you at a later date. The discussion a year ago was, I'd like to see us close our relationship with Charter One. And the main reason there is they're just our most difficult relationship to work with. And in reality, the Illinois public funds are operated by Charter Bank. So it's kind of like just moving it from one kind of a product in the bank to another kind of a product. But the customer service attention we get is at a much different level because it's a part of the Illinois funds. We don't actually deal with the bank. The state deals with the bank for us.
So,
I'm sorry, now,
go ahead.
Matthew, your question.
Where can I find the district's investment policy?
There's a copy of it in the office. I've got a copy of it here with me. I'd be happy to.
Just want to.
So just to clarify, you're talking about only moving the overage?
Yes.
And the overage is mostly due to that bequest?
Correct.
And so would that money, I mean, the bequest, are we planning to use it all for trees and bushes and beautification? We have to. And it has to be used by a certain date then, yeah? Or no? No, it doesn't have
all
to.
in 1 year.
Okay.
Right.
So it may in fact sit in that account for a while, or some of it at
You
least.
better believe it.
Okay,
Long time.
yeah. It's a lot of trees and bushes, right?
Yes.
But Jerry, the money that's going into the fund isn't really identified as the request.
Correct.
It's just dollars are dollars.
Right.
Okay.
It's just the general balances of the district.
And then if we ever have an overage again, is it easy enough to kind of deal with it in the same way? Okay. That sounds like it's
This should
a,
hopefully help us stop having to keep opening up bank relationships and move things around.
So you would like a motion to approve transferring the overage funds into this, to work to set this up and then to transfer the funds into this account?
well, you had said you could do it one of two ways, right? Start the accounts
The
first.
way I wrote it was I do it all under one resolution. If you want to strike the sentence and make me come back and ask for the balance transfer next month, that's fine, we just gotta strike the sentence out of here.
I don't see a need to separate the two, do you? I mean,
No, I'd move to pass the resolution as written.
Okay, I'll say.
I had a train of thought.
all in favor?
Piggybacking
Aye.
on something you said, I'm trying to remember what it was. I'm sorry, I can't think of it right now, but.
Okay, so, yeah.
Aye.
Aye.
Yes.
Was this a separate thing then, discuss and authorize the merchant processing account change, or
Merchant
that's
processing is yet another item.
Okay.
This is less my domain and more Natalie's, but I'm involved with it.
Do we have that piece of paper?
No, there's not a piece of paper here so much as to kind of discuss the problem and get your go-ahead to go forward with it. Here's the situation. We take payments through our website through a third-party service called Stripe. So when somebody signs up on pays money with a credit card, the money goes to the company Stripe, and we have an account there. As the treasurer, I don't see that money, I don't account for that money until that money is transferred by Stripe to the Park District's bank accounts. And Natalie didn't set this up, she inherited it. Prior to Stripe, we had another company that did it. We'd had merchant processing services with different outfits over the years. Last fall, we had a situation develop where, because I don't see this money, I'm not really paying close attention to the flow of coming into the account, and we have ups and downs. We have seasons of the year where we don't have a lot of registrations and seasons when we do. So it didn't dawn on me right away that we were receiving no Stripe money for a period of time until it got to be 2.5 months or so into it, and they had $35,000 worth of our money that they'd never given us and they'd been holding for several months. And the reason they were holding it was because they had detected suspicious, potentially fraudulent activity and had put a freeze on the transfers of money to us. We had to do a little fighting with them to get our money. First, we didn't even realize they were holding our money, and then do a little battle with them to get our money. In the meantime, we had a changeover of personnel managing our Chase relationship, and they were like they always are, they want to sell us every product they've got. But they brought up merchant processing, and Natalie had expressed the desire. She said, if there's any way we can get anybody but Stripe, she'd love to consider it. I said to them, I think, I'm not the guy to talk to. We need to talk to Natalie. They had some conversations. I think there's a desire, I have no objection to it. I think there's a desire on Natalie's part to move forward with moving our merchant processing relationship from Stripe to Chase. And I, from a treasury standpoint, have no issues with that whatsoever. And that's kind of the issue before you. They've got documents we need to sign if we want to do that. I would be the signer for those documents. That's something we want to do, just a board motion to do that.
Usually there are fees associated with credit card processing, so what is the difference, if any, between Stripe and Chase?
It's, from what I understand, and correct me if I'm wrong, because Jessica had this conversation with me too, it's fairly comparable, and I believe that the Chase, they process it in a different way, right? So when the money goes into the Stripe account, when somebody uses their credit card to make a payment for a camp, for example, and Stripe receives that money, they immediately, the next day, within 24 hours, put that money into our account minus their fee.
Mm-hmm.
So they take out, and I have to double check this to make sure, but I believe it's 3%.
Mm-hmm.
The way they explained it was...
Let me interrupt and touch upon that a bit. So technically what's happening is, if there's a $100 class, we're not getting $100.
Mm-hmm.
When we see revenue, we're seeing revenue net of fees, which the subtlety of that is technically it's never coming before you as a board to vote and approve what are our fees that we're paying for that service in the way that Stripe processes. Prior to Stripe, we had another service, I don't remember their name right now, they were based out of Omaha, and they charged the fee separately and we voted every month. But as you may recall, it was a nightmare with them every month because what they actually took out of our checking account never matched the amount that was on our invoice. And Mike Miro was program director at the time, and he'd have to every month get on the phone and fight with them over the discrepancy. We've had lengthy discussions with the people at Chase and been promised and assured it's like the old system in that we will see the fees and charges separately, but that whatever they say on the statement will exactly match what actually comes out of our account.
The other thing about the fees is that Chase will only charge us one fee a month. It's a flat fee based on all the charges that happen for us, so it's a percentage off of everything that we've made, not per transaction, which is what we're being charged now, is per transaction that goes through Stripe. So it would actually lower our costs of the fees that are being taken out because it's just the one-time fee.
But isn't it the same percentage either way? So how is it actually different?
It's a lower percentage.
Oh, it is.
Chase only takes 2.5%.
Okay.
And it would always be the same fee.
And it's always the same fee. They said the only reason that would change is if, for some reason, our amount of usage like jumped crazy, which wouldn't happen. So it's a guaranteed thing. We'd also have a statement. We get a big statement every month, so we would see exactly what it is that's being taken out, and then we can vote on, yeah, we agree to get that fee.
There would also be somebody besides myself that has access to that Stripe account, which is, that's the hard thing, is the way it was set up, the program director is responsible for the Stripe account, but I don't see numbers in any other place. So I dealt with the fraud issue in October and went through all of that stuff with them, and they told me that at that point they would unfreeze it, but I don't see our numbers, I don't see our bank account, so I didn't know for 2 months that they had not been actually releasing those funds into our account, and then we had this huge buildup. It was right before we opened registration for camp, and I was like, we're gonna have like $75,000 tomorrow if we don't resolve this problem anyway. And it was just a clerical mistake on their end. Like, they just didn't hit the button essentially to like unfreeze the account. But anyway, it would be nice if we got a statement like she's talking about, or somebody else had eyes on this kind of stuff besides me, because I don't have access to any of the other numbers essentially.
And inherent to the change to Chase, somebody else would have, you'd be viewing these numbers instead of Stripe.
And Jessica would as well.
The three of us would be able to see the numbers because Jerry handles the Chase accounts of it. I log in to make transfers and payments and things, so I can see if the money is coming in and the deposits that I make, that they're there and get cleared through. I have to do that for the outstandings reports and things like that. So the three of us would be able to have access. She can see when payments are made through on the website that are there. And then I can see, when I go through to do my discrepancy reports, and Jerry can see when he goes through to do his as well.
Are there any downsides to the switch? Because otherwise it sounds like a no-brainer.
I haven't found one, that's
Okay.
why I'm totally in favor of it.
So we need a motion to do this?
Because of the change in relationships, yeah.
For the change, okay.
I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the change in relationships for the merchant.
Processing.
account.
Not from Stripe.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so this section is new to me from when I was on the board last call of the commissioners. I actually don't know technically what this is, except a chance for each commissioner to just say anything they want to say. Yeah?
If there's any neighborhood news or kind of, that was the idea, I think, behind it.
Yeah.
Okay. And is there an order I'm supposed to go in? No? So does anybody just want to jump in then, commissioners?
Well, I'd like to say that I won't be at the next meeting, because I have a family. No, I don't need to be electronically, because I'll be busy. I'm gonna be in a family thing and I won't be available that night, that's why I'm not coming. So, in the past, we've even moved meetings if it's possible, but, whatever. I wanted to say that.
Is that meeting date an issue for either of you? And also if Dan is there? Is he still on the phone?
Dan? Connected.
I am actually supposed to be out of town for that meeting as well, so that would be at least two of us that are gone. And I think you had said, and I feel the same way, that I would love to reschedule it if that works for people, because I like to attend every meeting.
What's the date of the meeting?
I want to say it's the 13th.
It's the
Does that sound
13th.
right?
June 13th.
June 13th.
So,
I could do it any day the next week.
I'm available the 19th, the next Wednesday.
you know, that's pretty late in the month. Does that pose a problem with bills, Jerry? No?
Yeah, we get hit with
Is
late
the-
fees.
Is the
We'll
first
get-
week?
We'll get hit with late fees?
It's way early for bills. We-
I would say, I don't know when you leave, or when.
I would be back
No, but when do you leave?
the week before.
Okay,
Because
because
it would have to be, I mean, for me to attend it, it would have to be Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday of the next week.
Okay. For me, I would still be in town the 11th, like if we wanted to do I leave the 12th. So, you know, if we wanted to do a Tuesday night, that would work for me. We can do this part later, yeah? We don't have to decide right now, just in the interest of moving on, but.
Just give your dates again, so maybe we could.
I'm gone from the 12th to the 18th. And it sounds like you're gone the whole week before the.
Yeah, I'm going from the June 1st.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the meeting was going to be the 13th. I leave the day before the meeting, but the 11th is an option for me. If people just want to check their calendars, then we
You're
can
going
kind
until
of.
what day?
I'm going until what's that Sunday,
After the 13th?
16th.
Okay.
Can I?
But you're saying that we shouldn't go too late or too early?
Well, you can't go the first week of June. We won't have half the bills.
Okay.
And then if you go too late, we get hit with late fees.
What were you going to say?
We have a workshop that night, June 11th. We have a West African dance workshop.
Oh.
It's a 2-hour workshop that evening.
Okay.
If we push it later, I can always call the bills that are owed and ask them to please make a note that the board meeting was changed and that the payment will be coming the following week.
Mhm.
They're usually okay with that, I do that in the past.
Okay. Also, I don't know if this is allowed, but just like you call the president for a petty
She
cash.
gets stuffed up.
Yeah, she really does.
Yeah, as long as, I mean, we wouldn't want to incur any late fines or, you know, have any of that, but if you think that that would be easy enough and you don't mind the added, okay.
What's the Wednesday after?
So the Wednesday after would be the 19th, and you're back or you're not back? You are back?
Somebody send an email to everybody and see if that date or pick another date is okay.
The 19th?
Yeah.
Sure.
I mean, I don't have a schedule in front of me, but I think it's okay. It's a Wednesday.
That works for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, do you want, if it works for, let's check out Dan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You two think it's okay?
I think it's okay.
Okay. Yeah, let's just have an email to follow up and make sure, and that way Dan can be included if he's not hearing this or whatever's going on. And then we can finalize that. So that was, okay, that was in the call of commissioners. Is that all you wanted to say, Debbie?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. Yeah.
If I could jump in real
Yeah.
quick. I remembered what I was trying to say earlier, Mr. Mitchell. The investment policy, from what I've seen of it and read and compared to the Illinois public funds policy, is kind of like our ordinance and stuff. It kind of just taking the state language and then putting it into the park district. So it's, you know, if they say you got to worry about safety of principle, ours says safety of principle. If they say rate of return, ours says rate of return, that kind of a thing.
It's about my drafting.
I don't have any commissioner comment at this point. Pat?
Can I just throw something in? Because
Yeah.
if Dan was here, he'd say it. A week from Sunday, we're at we're at Elks Park. Lincoln School's going to have an all-school event out there, noon to 6.
At Lider?
Elks.
Oh, at Elks, okay, okay.
What did you say the date was?
Yeah, what is the date of that?
What's the date?
Sunday, the 19th,
Of May.
May.
And for the call of commissioners, I'd like to just thank everybody who's still here, everybody that came and left, especially folks who took the time to speak. I really appreciate it and mean to work with members of the community to move forward, address concerns, foster relationships. Done.
And speaking of citizen comment, then there is always a section for that at the end. If anybody has anything more to say, or if you didn't get a chance, yeah?
Yeah, very briefly. First of all, thank you for giving everybody time at the beginning, and I highly recommend it, so And if it is your intention to have transparency with the community, which I have the sense it is, I would strongly suggest that you have a board pack available. There's no way for us right now to follow along with your budget conversations, your policy conversations, and it can't be too difficult to post a PDF of the packet that you're already putting together for yourself. So I really just strongly recommend that. And then along those lines, I'm glad you're doing a website update because it is pretty clunky and it could be there, but I don't see where I would find the information about this board meeting change, the changing of the date of your meeting. And again, and I mean, maybe you have email alerts, and I just need to get on an email list. That would be great to be able to know where that is. And then finally, I highly recommend the YWCA Equity Institute based on personal experience. I'm part of an organization that engaged with them for a 2-year process, and Tiffany described to you, Martha, and probably to Natalie, going back for further. So when we had all this work done and then the board was trying to accomplish something specific, and Eileen Hogan, who's the other director of the Equity Institute, just came right back and spent 2 hours with our board, at their summer retreat to, give that further guidance that they needed. They're local, they know Evanston and the equity issues in Evanston inside out through their relationships with organizations like ours who've done that work, and also with not-for-profits who are engaged with equity work with schools, etc.
Thank you. I'll just say it very briefly. My name is Jean Zeicher. After listening to everybody and hearing the people on the board, it seems to me that obviously the message has been heard and a lot of work has already been done in terms of equity, moving towards better equity, better community involvement, inclusion, and so forth. And I would like to, unfortunately, a lot of our cast members here have left, but I would just like to remind everybody in the community that this is a very small park district, and the people that are going to end up doing a lot of the work, it's pretty much Natalie and Brian and Jessica, and the couple of guys that you got that work on in the parks. So I hope that people will have some patience and understand that it's not going to be like flipping a light switch and all of a sudden everything is going to be beautiful and just everything that you'd ever wanted. Also the fact that anything that takes money, like involving the WIHE program or any other program or whatever, these things have to be put in the budget and approved and so forth and so on. So, I would say clearly the message has been heard, and I sense everybody is open to working on it, making it a better place, and, applause to you guys that have just joined the board for stepping up and volunteering your time and your service and so forth. But everybody have patience, and let's not, I'm really it's kind of getting old to me to listen to people say how Ridgeville is so bad and Ridgeville is this and that, and it's sort of like, okay, it doesn't help anything to be unkind. It doesn't help anybody to keep ragging on things that have gone wrong. And let's now open a new page and let's give everybody a chance to make the progress that we all want to make. So patience and help, volunteer for one of these committees where if you have the time and the skills and so forth, I think that's a great idea.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Last call, citizen comment. No.
I have a quick follow-up on, yay, you're going to open up the bathrooms. It sounds like you're just going to open them up for the soccer, right? I would really encourage you to open them up for everybody who uses the park, for all the park visitors. Maybe open up as part of the, when you put up the basketball hoops and take them down, have that be around with opening up the bathroom so that everybody at the parks, I know that there's even t-ball there, there's basketball players, there's people, there's also you can be opening up lighter park, and I know as a mom, right, if I would choose to go there more too if I knew there was going to be bathrooms available, even though I know it's just across the street. So, thank you for making that call and making that happen for soccer. And I encourage you to open it up for all of the visitors during park hours.
Okay, anybody else, citizen comments?
I'll make a motion to go into executive session.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.